This woman's fate was truly wretched. She woke up to find herself inside a dating sim, a game about winning the hearts of men. And not just any character, but the villainous Pella, who was repeatedly killed by the Crown Prince. Ironically, it was a game she often played and enjoyed. She even had a fondness for Pella, finding a strange kinship with the villainous. Still, this sudden turn of events was difficult to process. She got up, intending to familiarize herself with these strange new surroundings. A sharp, stinging sensation shot through her arm, startling her. She looked down in horror to find it covered in tiny pinpricks. Suddenly, a dismissive voice spoke from beside her. Pella turned, surprised, to see the game's servant girl. Anger flared, but the game's multiple-choice format choked her response. Powerless to speak or act freely, she could only watch as the servant girl smirked, her malice unconcealed. Pella racked her brain. The servant girl had always been unpleasant, but she didn't recall any needle-stabbing incidents in the game. Then, a chilling memory surfaced, a failed playthrough, ending with Pella dying helplessly under the Crown Prince's blade. She remembered faint marks on her arm then, dismissed as blemishes. Now, their true nature was horrifyingly clear. The servant girl's insistent prompting to wash for breakfast pulled Pella from her grim recollections. She touched the icy water the girl had prepared. This was nothing, as the unloved, illegitimate daughter in her real life. The chill of this water was a trifle compared to the icy atmosphere of her family home. She walked into the dining room, only to be confronted by a table laden with nauseating, sour-smelling food. Fury surged, and just as quickly, the familiar system notification pinged in her ear. The dreaded multiple-choice options. This woman's luck was truly abysmal. Not only had she been absurdly transported into a dating sim, but she wasn't even the beloved heroine. To win this game, she had to raise any one of the male characters. Initial 30% affection rating to a full 100%. Despite the plethora of handsome male characters, none of them were truly hers, and she had to constantly be wary of them. Because no matter her choices, Pella, the villainess, was doomed. Starved by male lead number 1, indirectly stabbed by number 2, or calmly murdered by number 3. Every choice held a hidden danger. Every answer determined her fate. One wrong step, and she'd lose the male lead's hard-won affection. Even more tragically, despite her beauty, status, and wealth as the Duke's daughter, she was nothing more than an unloved, adopted child. Within the family, 2 brothers watched her with suspicion, convinced she had stolen everything that rightfully belonged to their precious younger sister. And the true Mary Sue heroine? An 18-year-old girl from the countryside, Eve, the Duke's actual youngest daughter, lost 6 years ago. The true heiress, born to privilege. Unsurprisingly, the male leads were all smitten with her. Eve's return to the ducal estate would signal Pella's downfall, stripping her of her wealth, reputation, and status. So, before the true daughter appeared, Pella had to capture the heart of one of the male leads to avoid a gruesome end. As the game's villainess, she suffered abuse from her entire family. Now, even the commoners dared to provoke her. Looking at the putrid breakfast and the system options before her, Pella, a veteran of countless playthroughs, recognized the 2 obvious traps. And unlike in the real world, there was no reset button in this game world. If she chose option 1, yes, she would immediately report the servant girl's misdeeds, embellished for maximum effect, to the Duke. Word would reach the eldest son, her so-called elder brother, who would then order her to eat the spoiled food, leaving her to starve to death in a desolate room. If she chose option 2, the second son would happen upon the scene. Leaping to the servant girl's defense, he would accidentally impale Pella's throat with a fork in the ensuing chaos. Left with no other choice, Pella selected option 3. Her body, controlled by the system, began to lift the spoon and swallow the foul concoction. The servant girl stared, astonished, as Pella, for once, didn't fly into a rage. Meanwhile, Pella's stomach churned violently. She wanted to refuse, but without a system command, her body remained stubbornly, sickeningly out of her control. The thought struck Pella. Even before, in the real world, as the daughter of her father's mistress, she'd been constantly bullied by her 2 resentful older brothers. Now, transported into this game world, she still couldn't escape their torment. At that moment, the second brother, Helena, happened to pass by the door. Seeing Pella picking at her repulsive meal, he stepped inside for a closer look. His face paled at the sight of the food. "It was you," he roared furiously. Seeing the situation turn sour, the servant girl who had brought the food hastily knelt, stammering out excuses. Helena didn't want to hear any of her justifications. Disgusted, he ordered the guards to drag her away and punish her. He then turned to Pella, cautiously patting her shoulder. "Why didn't you refuse?" he asked, genuinely perplexed. "Why didn't you flip the table and yell like you usually do?" Pella could only watch in silent frustration. The system hadn't presented her with any choices, leaving her unable to act or speak. Her thoughts churned bitterly. Was all this misery truly her fault? Was it all because of a mere servant girl? If the Duke's family hadn't turned a blind eye, this humiliation, this subjugation by the servants, wouldn't have happened. Helena, observing Pella's silence, his face a mask of concern, asked if she needed a doctor. Looking at his anxious expression, Pella thought that if he were truly ignorant of her situation in this world, she might have been grateful for his concern. But sadly, she knew better. It all felt so fake. Then, with a ding, the system options finally appeared. But every single one was terrible. When would she finally have control over her own words? For the sake of survival, she chose the mildest option. Hearing Pella's curt, "It's none of your business," Helena fell silent for a long moment. Then, with a flash of spite, he retorted, "The Duke's estate doesn't have a doctor with time to treat you anyway. I don't care what you eat, live or die. It's your choice." He stormed off angrily. As he left, Pella noticed something flicker above his head, his favorability rating inexplicably jumping from -10% to -3%. She couldn't understand why it had risen. Back in her room, washing up, Pella finally took a proper look at her reflection in the mirror. Silky, luminous pink hair, emerald green eyes, even more striking than she remembered from playing the game. Undeniably beautiful, yet with an unsettling hint of malice. Pella sighed. The villainess, indeed. And according to the game's lore, this villainess's mother was a poor merchant who had died of illness. Pella, bearing a striking resemblance to the Duke's lost daughter, had been taken in by Carlith, the Empire's only Duke. As Pella grew older, her appearance changed significantly. She no longer looked like the deceased Duchess, and the Duke grew increasingly distant. She became demanding and capricious, desperate for his attention. Pella couldn't fathom why the Duke hadn't continued searching for his real daughter, instead molding an innocent child into a counterfeit replacement. The day's events had made the villainess's treatment within the Duke's household painfully clear. A wave of sadness washed over her. If this had been going on since she was adopted at 12, she couldn't bear to imagine the years of mistreatment she had endured. In this grand estate, no one cared for her, protected her, or believed in her. She gently touched her reflection in the mirror. So, the villainess had been forced into this role. But how could she pity her? From now on, she was that villainess, the one constantly at risk of being killed by the male leads. Moving to the desk, she picked up a pen and paper, reviewing the information, searching for a path to survival. This game had 5 potential romantic interests. If their favorability ratings dropped too low, it would likely mean her death. First to appear were Derek and Helena, the Duke's sons, her stepbrothers. The eldest, Derek, heir to the dukedom, was serious and aloof, a typical nobleman. He held a clear disdain and contempt for Pella, who had usurped his true sister's place. Helena, the second son, was cunning, belligerent, and coarse in his speech. He delighted in tormenting Pella. Pella looked at their names and crossed them out without hesitation. The mere word brother filled her with loathing, and with their favorability already in the negative from the start, she wouldn't waste her time on them. The third was the crown prince, whose life was rumored to be as worthless as grass. In Pella's memory, this imperial crown prince had suffered some unfortunate experiences, but after meeting the angelic heroine, he had changed his ways. But to Pella, he was nothing short of a grim reaper. In her previous playthroughs, she had died repeatedly by his hand, her progress perpetually stalled at that point. She crossed his name out with equal decisiveness. The fourth was an eccentric mage, the head of the Donjuan Marquisate. He had a secret identity, running a merchant guild that traded in information and mysterious artifacts. He's also completely smitten with the protagonist, Ifu, and unhesitatingly protective of her. The last one is a promoted knight of the Duke's estate. He's a nobleman of the kingdom, exceptionally skilled in swordsmanship. The Duke paid a hefty price to bring him into the estate, making him the youngest sword master in history. Perhaps because he once served Pella, he's the only one who, even in the end, sympathizes with the villainess. Only this utterly discriminatory one is the most promising candidate so far. The true protagonist, Ifu, will return upon Pella's coming-of-age ceremony. So, before that, she must capture the heart of one of them. Only then can she avoid being killed by the male lead who's obsessed with Ifu and have a chance to return to real life. Just then, a knock echoed from the door. Before Pella could hide the note, the door was abruptly opened. The white-haired old butler stood at the entrance, announcing, "The Duke requests your presence." Though relieved by the Duke's summons, Pella was irritated by the butler's condescending tone. While agonizing over whether to show her displeasure, the white option box popped up before her eyes. Frustrated, Pella selected the third option. She coldly replied, "Understood," and stepped out of the room, following the butler. She noted the unfriendly glances from the maids in the hallway. Listening to their hushed whispers and gossip, Pella no longer cared. Unconsciously, she arrived at the Duke's door. As the door opened, Pella faced her adoptive father, the Duke, for the first time since her transmigration. Seeing the Duke greet her with the same emotionless demeanor as her father in her previous life, a familiar pang resonated within her. "You've arrived," the Duke said. He shared the same dark hair and blue eyes as Derek, his eldest son. His impassive face was a mask of aristocratic indifference. Pella hid her trembling fingers and curtsied. As expected, the white option box appeared. Without hesitation, Pella chose the first and only option that wasn't laced with saccharine flattery or outright defiance. "What is it you want?" The Duke, continuing his work, inquired. "I heard there was some trouble this morning." A new set of options immediately followed. Pella saw they were all disrespectful. If only I resembled his daughter, Pella thought. Perhaps he'd show me some kindness. Hearing no response, the Duke looked up. He slammed his pen on the desk with a bang. Pella prayed nervously, realizing she had to choose. She stammered, "This isn't something the Duke should be concerned with, is it?" The Duke fixed her with a sharp gaze. "It's been 6 years since you entered this household." He paused, then repeated, 6 years. "So, the coming-of-age ceremony is on my 18th birthday," Pella thought. The Duke continued, "Entering this family is no simple matter. Since your adoption, I haven't been stingy. Even with your daily extravagance, you've accepted everything without question. Yet, in these 6 years, I've seen no benefit you bring to the Callie family." Just as Pella felt she couldn't endure any longer, the options appeared. She saw the one she desired with relief. She remembered mocking this cowardly option while playing the game in her room. Now, it was a lifesaver. Without hesitation, Pella dropped to her knees. She pleaded with the Duke. He was startled by her actions and the way she addressed him. Pella realized with excitement that by calling him father, she had completed a hidden mission. The reward? She could finally disable the infernal option mode. Pella chose to turn it off without a second thought, her heart dancing with joy. Maintaining a calm demeanor, she expressed remorse to the Duke, hoping to earn his forgiveness. Though she was the victim of the morning's incident, Pella knew from past experience that blame always fell on her. Knowing when to yield was the best course of action. She earnestly assured the Duke, "Before my coming-of-age ceremony, I will strive to prove my worth." The Duke stared at her, wide-eyed with surprise. He couldn't comprehend this sudden change in Pella. Quickly regaining his composure, the Duke told Pella, "As a member of the Calite family, you must be accountable for your words. Don't squander the opportunity given to you today." After thanking him, Pella quickly left the oppressive atmosphere. After all, the Duke wasn't her target for affection. Escaping with her life was enough for today. Just as she was about to return to her room, a voice cut through the air. "Didn't I tell you to live quietly?" Pella turned to see the source of the voice. She recognized it instantly. It was Derek, the eldest son, who held such disdain for her. He had approached Pella without her noticing. His voice, low and cold, cut through the air. "Emily has served this house loyally for almost 10 years. Back then, even with your family's money, no one was willing to serve you. Only Emily. And now you're driving away the only one who cares for you." Pella's anger simmered. It was his brother who had caused the trouble this morning, wasn't it? Glancing at Derek's 0% favorability rating, she desperately tried to maintain her composure. "Don't talk back. If his favorability drops any lower, things will get even worse." Not wanting to respond, she tried to reopen the options menu. She hadn't looked at it in a while, and the sight made her recoil, slamming the menu shut. They were practically trying to kill her. Derek watched Pella's silence, his voice growing colder. So now you dare ignore me? Pella shot him a frustrated look, dipped her head again in a show of respect, and apologized. How long would she have to apologize for things she hadn't done? It was the same in her previous life, constantly framed and forced to apologize by her stepbrothers. She had her pride, too. This constant groveling was humiliating. Derek seemed taken aback by her submissive attitude. Pella added earnestly, "You were right before. I've been ignorant and arrogant. I won't dismiss the maids again. I've already admitted my mistake to father. I won't cause you any more trouble." But inside, Pella felt a pang of resentment. To survive, it seemed she would have to constantly bend to their will. Hearing Derek's forgiveness, she was relieved to finally be able to return to her room. But as she turned to leave, the world swam before her eyes. A wave of dizziness washed over her. Derek, though rough, caught her before she fell. "I heard you ate something spoiled," he said, concern lacing his voice. "Should I call a doctor?" Pella's swirling thoughts suddenly sharpened. So he knew, and yet he still tried to blame her. If she hadn't backed down, he would have followed the game's script and killed her without hesitation. She pushed his hand away, forcing a smile. "It's fine, Duke Shaw. I already said I wouldn't cause you any more trouble." Then, without looking back, she walked away. Derek, however, was still dwelling on the fact that Pella hadn't called him brother as she usually did, but Duke Shaw. He felt a strange pang of loss. He remembered when Pella was younger, teased by Helena for being too afraid to call the Duke father. She would comically run to them and call them brother instead. Snapping out of his reverie, he turned and left. But what Pella didn't know was that his favorability rating had quietly risen from 0% to 5%. Back in her room, Pella collapsed onto the soft bed, instantly melting into its embrace. All those late nights playing the game hadn't been in vain. When she was trying to win Derek over, she'd tried calling him brother countless times. But he hated her so much that his favorability would drop every time he heard it. It was only in the face of near death that she'd remembered to call him Duke Shaw. What a stroke of luck. As she drifted off to sleep, Pella found herself in a dream. She saw herself as a child. Helena, furious, was yelling at her. "You thieving rat." Beside him, the Duke was demanding to know why she had entered Yvonne's room and stolen her necklace. Young Pella frantically denied it. "I didn't go into the room. I didn't steal anything." Then the butler stepped forward. "I saw Pella on the floor where Lady Yvonne's room is located several times. And I found Lady Yvonne's door unlocked." As everyone's gaze turned back to her, little Pella was on the verge of tears. "I'm not lying," she insisted, but no one believed her. They locked all the rooms on the third floor to prevent her from going near her stepsister's room. Pella opened her mouth to explain again, but the Duke brushed past her without a word. Once the Duke was gone, Helena shoved Pella roughly, sneering, "I told you to get out. Why didn't you listen?" Derek, following close behind, added coldly, "Lying is disgraceful." Little Pella crumpled to the floor like discarded trash. From that day on, the house was filled with jewelers. Pella bought an exorbitant amount of gems. People gossiped. Her stepbrothers called her ungrateful. She didn't care. And from that day on, little Pella never called the Duke father again. The scene abruptly shifted. A sharp, insistent knocking, knock, 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 jolted Pella from the reverie of her dream. Before she could gather her bearings, the door was flung open without a hint of courtesy. It was the butler, who had come to present her with a selection of new maids. At least it's not another accusation, Pella thought wearily. Wait a minute. This brazen intrusion, without so much as a by your leave for such a trivial matter, struck her as deeply disrespectful. Why barge in like this? What is your name? Pella demanded, her voice low and sharp. Startled by her uncharacteristic assertiveness, the butler stammered, "And my name is Hanai." "So you don't have a family name then?" Pella pressed. "And what about me? What is my name?" The butler bristled at her questioning, but, cowed by her sudden intensity, reluctantly replied, "Lady Pella Callie." A wave of empathy washed over Pella for the original, meek villainess of this body. To be subjected to such casual insults and disregard, she felt a surge of anger. The original Pella would have likely thrown a tantrum, instead of leveraging her noble title to put these servants in their place. Turning back to the butler, Pella offered a thin smile. "So, I am a noble, then. Can you tell me which law allows a commoner, with no connection whatsoever to this family, to burst into a noble's room? And a man, at that, into a young lady's chambers? If word of this were to spread, what do you suppose people would say? The butler, flustered, opened his mouth to explain, but Pella cut him off, her smile vanishing. Do I need to look up to speak to a servant? The butler immediately dropped to a trembling curtsy, stammering apologies. Pella felt a rush of satisfaction. You had best remember your lesson. I don't wish to see you again. Find someone else to relay messages to me in the future. The butler began to protest, but Pella fixed him with a chilling stare, daring him to argue. Grumbling his assent, the butler asked how he should arrange for her dinner. Pella waved him away dismissively. Collapsing on her bed, she felt a flicker of apprehension. The butler was, after all, a senior servant. What if he complained to the Duke? But then, a different feeling surfaced: triumph. The original Pella had endured 6 years of such disrespect. Today, she had finally spoken up. The next day, it seemed her warning had had its intended effect. A middle-aged maid, the head maid, came to discuss the selection of a new personal maid. What happened to Emily, my previous maid? Pella inquired. Was she dismissed? The head maid stammered, in no Mississippi. She was disciplined for her negligence. 3 months' wages docked and reassigned to laundry duty. I want her back, Pella stated firmly. I am accustomed to her service. See to it. The head maid looked surprised. But Miss Emily was disrespectful. Young Master Derek himself administered the punishment. If you insist, I must first consult the Duke. Pella watched the head maid's demeanor shift from initial confidence to increasing anxiety. She had a suspicion that this woman was the true instigator. The head maid's attempt at righteous indignation only made Pella laugh. If I were to throw a fit, she mused aloud, they would certainly jump to obey. Perhaps they expect me to behave like the old Pella, throwing things in a hysterical rage. They'll be disappointed. Pella turned. I shall speak to father myself. I will explain yesterday's events and ask for his forgiveness. That should resolve the matter. After all, Emily wasn't the mastermind behind Pella's mistreatment, nor was she the only culprit. But if even the head maid condoned such behavior, that was a different story. The head maid's eyes widened. At once, miss, she replied, her voice now laced with a frantic respect. I will bring Emily to you immediately. Before, no one had feared the Duke's daughter. Any misbehavior on their part could be easily dismissed as the whims of a spoiled child. But now, Pella was no longer a pushover. And in the future, she added pointedly, I do not like to repeat myself. You may leave. Having apparently heard something from the head maid, Emily soon arrived, carrying a breakfast tray. Emily trembled as she spoke. Miss, I have prepared your breakfast. The events of the previous day had clearly taken a toll on her. The fresh salad and juicy steak looked appealing, but after a few bites, the memories of the past few days stole Pella's appetite. Putting down her cutlery, she called out, Emily, bring me the needle I use for my embroidery each morning. Emily, lost in her own thoughts, jumped at the sound of Pella's voice. Her face paled, and she hastily dropped to her knees, kowtowing and begging Pella's forgiveness. Then, a sharp, dangerous voice sliced through the air from Pella's lips. Didn't you hear the head maid? I don't like repeating myself. Give me the needle. Even as she commanded, Pella fought to control the tremors running through her body, barely visible beneath the hairline at her temple. Emily, digging through her pockets, unearthed the needle and cautiously handed it to Pella. Pella stared at the small, jade-colored needle, a pang of sorrow twisting in her gut. This was the needle that, every morning, had jolted the villainess awake in agony. Even though her arms were left bruised and broken, no one ever noticed. Day after day, the pinpricks. How much pain the villainess must have endured. Emily, watch closely. Pella hissed, her voice tight with suppressed fury. Without a moment's hesitation, she plunged the needle deep into the pristine flesh of her palm. Emily gasped, a choked sob escaping her. It was as if she, not Pella, was the one being pierced. Pella's voice softened. Emily, you don't need to cry, because you inflicted all of this. From now on, whatever you do to me, I will accept without question. Right now, there are only 2 pinpricks, but there could be 3 for even more. One day, someone will notice, and then you will be the abuser. Pella's words, laced with veiled threats, hung heavy in the air. Emily's sobs subsided, replaced by a shuddering fear. Pella withdrew the needle, her gaze fixed on Emily as the maid frantically began clearing the table, her movements jerky and hurried. This was precisely what Pella wanted, to exploit Emily's weakness, to mold her into a pawn in her own game. Suddenly, the door behind her was flung open with a furious bang. Pella spun around, her heart leaping in her throat. Standing there, his face contorted with rage, was Derek, his -3% approval rating flashing in Pella's mind. His eyes were locked on Emily. "What are you doing?" he roared. Pella swiftly hit a nearby fork, fearing Derek might use it as a weapon, before calmly dismissing Emily. As Emily turned to leave, Derek barked, "Where do you think you're going?" With frantic gestures, Pella signaled to Emily to flee. Emily bolted from the room. Derek turned his furious gaze on Pella. "Explain yourself. What's going on here? Why are you still using that wretch?" Pella's mind raced. What could she say to avoid raising a death flag? She swallowed, her throat dry, as she faced Derek's incandescent rage. "It's nothing serious," she began tentatively. "Don't you dare dismiss it." Derek snarled, his eyes blazing. "That impudent little nobody. How dare she try to trick a member of the Khalid family? How dare she serve spoiled food to her master?" Seeing him more enraged than she, the actual victim, was, Pella couldn't help but feel a flicker of amusement. Noticing Pella's faint smile, Derek was about to explode. "How dare you laugh? You're the only one stupid enough to do something like that." Pella's heart sank. The entire Duke's household, from top to bottom, was so accustomed to the Duke's blatant favoritism and neglect of Pella that it had become ingrained. Pella looked at Derek, her expression impassive. "I already spoke to Father about this yesterday." "Of course you did. I told Father about it, and he agreed to throw that insolent girl out," Derek declared, puffing out his chest. Pella's voice remained level. "Father and my older brother don't want her dismissed." Derek's eyes widened in disbelief. "What, father and older brother?" The unexpected answer left him momentarily stunned. He recovered quickly, his voice booming. "Are you an idiot? Why should I refuse? What can I do about it?" "What do you mean? What can you do? Do you want to keep eating this garbage and kill yourself? Can you guarantee the next maid won't do the same?" Derek's ranting ceased abruptly at Pella's question. Pella, carefully monitoring the -3% hovering over Derek's head, chose her words with precision. She forced herself to remain calm. The servant's disdain stemmed directly from the attitudes of her two insufferable brothers. If that approval rating dipped any lower, death would likely be her fate. If that approval rating dipped any lower, death would likely be her fate. Pella spoke slowly, deliberately. "I already went to Father yesterday and begged for forgiveness." Derek stared at her, utterly shocked. Pella, who never admitted fault, had actually knelt and begged for forgiveness? Pella, concealing her true motives, continued speaking. "I've already spoken to Father. I won't cause any more trouble while I'm grounded. Just pretend it never happened." "Please." "Derek," Pella pleaded. Truthfully, she just wanted this moody young man to do absolutely nothing. If he remained inactive, her chances of dying would decrease by at least half. Watching Pella lower her head in supplication, Derek stared at her with a strange expression. Then, unable to contain himself any longer, he roared like thunder. "Don't you have any self-respect? You've been bullied like that, and you still want to sweep it under the rug? You were better off before, screaming and throwing things." "That was more like you," Pella calmly began. "When you planted the Duchess's necklace in my room, wasn't that exactly what you wanted to happen to me? Isn't that why you kept bullying me? What right did he have to lecture her about self-respect? Hadn't he been the one who orchestrated her downfall?" Faced with Pella's composure, Derek's jaw dropped. He stammered, trying to explain, "Up until today, I haven't had any thoughts about blaming you or anything, because during that time, I was also stupid. But now I'm tired of all this." Pella simply looked at him with her clear blue eyes and said, "I'm an adult, about to have my coming-of-age ceremony. I can't stay at the Khalid estate forever, can I?" Derek's face paled. "What do you mean? You want to get married? Looking like this?" Pella continued, "That depends entirely on Father and Derek's decision. Honestly, I don't know what the future holds. Even if my strategy succeeds, I don't know if I can return to my original world, or even if I'll live to see that day. But one thing I know for sure is that you, Derek, are definitely not my target." Pella glanced at the door and dismissed him. "It's almost time for my bath. Could you please leave?" Derek's face became a mask of misery and contortion. Pella had never seen this expression on him in the game. Surprised, she felt a sudden lurch in her heart. No way. Could his affection actually be decreasing? Just then, the bare branches in Derek's light pink hair began to shimmer. They rose to 3%. A stiff Derek mumbled, "I'm an idiot for caring about you. With that, he turned and left. Pella watched his retreating figure, pondering the recent rise in affection. She couldn't quite believe it. She thought he was the least likely. Pella's grounding didn't last long. Emily brought her an invitation, her face etched with concern. "This is an invitation from the Imperial Palace." Pella asked, puzzled. "Yes, Mississippi. It's for the second prince's birthday banquet. Lord Shaw, the Duke instructed me to inform you and to ensure you are prepared." Wasn't it Derek who said that? Pella almost used the title Lord Shaw, like the servants, quickly correcting herself. Of course, Derek hadn't directly told her about the banquet, but this meant her confinement was over. As she considered the events that were about to unfold, a sudden thought struck her. If she went to the palace, it meant she might see the crown prince. Not might, but definitely would. The second prince's birthday banquet was the crown prince's debut in the story. Pella shuddered, remembering the countless times she'd died by his hand in the game. Filled with dread, she asked Emily urgently, "Will father be attending?" "His Grace is busy tomorrow. Young Master Derek will escort you to the Imperial Palace." Pella's spirits plummeted. If she wanted to avoid the banquet, she would have to lie to Derek. Knowing his personality, that would definitely lower his affection. Pella tried to recall the game's plot, but couldn't remember many details. After all, in the game, whenever she encountered the crown prince alone, she was killed before any real conversation could begin. She'd had to restart the game over and over. Killed before any real conversation could begin, forcing her to restart again and again. Suddenly, an idea sparked in Pella's mind. She wondered if she should just die once and see what happened. If the game ended, could she return to her original world? Or perhaps a reset button would appear just as she was about to die. With this thought, Pella resolved to face the crown prince. The following day, Pella bathed in a tub infused with milk and fragrant oils. A massage followed, then a facial mask. This tedious ritual had been repeated countless times. She watched as the maids, buzzing with excitement, fussed around her. They debated the most suitable makeup style for the banquet. Pella glanced at her reflection. A naturally beautiful face stared back. Pella understood their excitement. With a sigh, she instructed them to bring her the plainest dress. She saw the regret in their eyes. Such a striking appearance, yet unable to be adorned. Pella chose a dark green gown. The high collar not only concealed her neck, but also drew less attention. Dismissing the disappointed maids, Pella kept Emily back, asking her to find a pair of long gloves. She watched Emily hesitate, clearly trying to stall. Pella explained it was to hide the needle marks on her hands. She observed Emily hurrying off to find the gloves. Pella mused that a little kindness had clearly gone to Emily's head. A reminder of her place was occasionally necessary. Just as she descended the stairs, Derek, a member of the Calite family, scanned her from head to toe, surprise evident on his face. "During your confinement," he remarked, "you've become almost presentable." Pella offered a slight curtsy at Derek's jibe, seeing his favorability rating above her head increase. She was dumbfounded. They hadn't even seen each other recently, yet his favorability had risen to 5%. Just how much did he detest the original Pella? It seemed his affection grew with their distance. She turned and quickly boarded the carriage. Derek, who had been about to assist her, realized she was already inside. Unaware of this, Pella wondered why he had paused. Derek glared at her before climbing into the carriage, to Pella's surprise. He sat directly opposite her. Flustered, Pella blurted out, "Are we supposed to share a carriage? Do you have a problem with that?" Derek retorted, "If you don't like it, you can take another carriage." Pella looked at him, forcing herself to say, "I don't dislike it. I'm rather pleased, actually." He glanced at her before turning his head away, a displeased expression on his face. Pella observed his frown. Knowing this would happen, why did they have to arrange for us to share a carriage? It's making things awkward for both of us, she thought. Glancing at his favorability rating, she instantly changed her mind. Her eyes widened. She watched as it increased by another 1%. Not long after their departure, however, Pella began to regret sharing the carriage with Derek. It was sheer torture. Not long after their departure, Pella began to regret sharing the carriage with Derek. It was sheer torture. When the carriage finally stopped in front of the palace gates, Pella inwardly cheered. Finally, I can escape this carriage of doom. She reached for the door, eager for fresh air. But Derek was already out, extending a hand towards her with an unreadable expression. Take it. Pella stared at him blankly, then recalled his outstretched hand when she boarded. He had intended to assist her. Derek raised an eyebrow. What are you doing? Aren't you getting out? Pella, finally realizing, took his hand and thanked him. As the banquet doors opened, the sound of trumpets heralded their arrival. Don't be reckless. Derek's cold voice reached her ears. You haven't forgotten you just finished your confinement yesterday, have you? If you cause another disturbance, it won't be just confinement this time. The excitement of the banquet drained away at his warning. I'll be careful, Pella replied meekly, forcing a smile. As soon as they entered the ballroom, Derek left her side, busy greeting others. Pella discreetly rolled her eyes when he wasn't looking. In contrast, no one approached Pella. The rumors of her causing a scene seemed to have had a significant impact. However, Pella didn't mind. All she wanted was to go home alive. As the banquet progressed, more and more people stole glances at the unusually quiet Pella, whispering amongst themselves. Just as she was reaching her limit, standing there alone, the announcement of the Empress and the second prince's arrival caused the chattering nobles to turn towards the entrance. With a curtsy, Empress Consort Hong and the second prince strode powerfully through the banquet hall. Their golden hair, a symbol of the royal family, shimmered brilliantly in the hall's light. Purra, witnessing the entire scene, wondered why the second prince occupied the throne, the emperor's seat. It was because in the game, there was almost never a scene requiring the emperor's presence. Thus, the crown prince always sat in that position. The second prince, seated on the throne, held forth eloquently when suddenly the doors were flung open with a resounding crash. Purra and the other guests swiftly turned their heads towards the sound, hearing the approaching footsteps of someone being dragged. Noble golden hair, like spun gold, swayed in the air. A man with a crimson cloak billowing behind him, his golden hair dancing, was the truly dazzling presence. Those standing near the second prince cried out in alarm as they realized the object being dragged by the crown prince was a person, and that person was motionless. The crown prince reached the steps where the empress consort and second prince sat and flung the body forward. He offered a chilling smile. Happy birthday, my dear brother. The empress consort shot up from her chair, pointing at the crown prince. What are you doing here? I've come to attend my dear brother's birthday banquet. The crown prince continued, his tone laced with sarcasm. How dare mother suggest? The empress consort's face flushed crimson, her body trembling with rage. As crown prince, you dare come here uninvited and commit such a horrific act. The crown prince feigned a gasp, his expression far from remorseful. Uninvited? Mother, you wound me. It's precisely because you invited me that I dropped everything at noon and rushed over here without a second thought. However, the person you sent with the invitation was utterly lacking in manners. Not only did he fail to present me with the invitation, but he insisted on engaging in other activities. So, I took it upon myself to discipline him. The crown prince slowly drew his sword with his free hand. He plunged the blade into the body of the assassin at his feet. The killer's agonized screams echoed through the hall. The crown prince's smile was sharp and predatory, like a lion returned from hell. He turned to the second prince, his voice low and menacing. If you wish to continue receiving such gifts, feel free to send more messengers. The empress's crown prince turned and strode away, leaving behind a crowd reeling in shock and horror. The second prince, his face ashen, remained speechless. Purra clutched her chest, the memories in her head a chaotic jumble. This scene had never happened in the game. She only remembered the game's system prompt. The crown prince, at odds with his brother, the second prince, angrily leaves the banquet hall after a minor disturbance. Watching the servants frantically cleaning up the blood and the body, Purra felt a surge of panic. This was a minor disturbance? Suddenly, a white system dialog box appeared before her eyes. Do you wish to unfold a new story? Proceed to the crown prince's labyrinthine garden. Purra hesitated. The crown prince she had just witnessed in reality was even more of a lunatic than his in-game counterpart. The thought of following him terrified her. What if he simply beheaded her on sight? Yet, Purra suppressed her fear of death. She was here to die, after all. Perhaps if she survived this, she could return to the real world. Besides, there was likely a reset button. If things went wrong, she could just start over. With this thought, Purra's trembling finger selected yes. Purra opened her eyes again, finding herself standing at the entrance of the labyrinthine garden. A teleportation function? How convenient, she thought. Now, let's march towards death. Following the system's guiding lights, Purra walked for a long time without seeing the crown prince. Just as she began to wonder where he was, something cold and heavy pressed against her neck. The crown prince, turning to face her, wore a chilling smile, as if he had stumbled upon something amusing. His expression was almost demonic. Well, if it isn't the Callert family's mad dog. After witnessing that little performance in the banquet hall, you still dare to follow me? You seem eager to meet your maker. Purr's skin crawled as the crown prince's expression turned blank. Menace radiated from him. He tightened his grip on his sword, pressing the blade closer. Speak. Why are you following me like a rat? Purr's instinct screamed that he intended to kill her. Her eyes darted around, desperately searching for the reset button, but it was nowhere to be found. The crown prince spoke impatiently, refusing to answer. Just say your goodbyes to your family at the Duke's estate. I'll personally deliver your last words to the Callert family. With that, the crown prince raised his sword, poised to strike. Pella cried out in a panic. Wait a minute. The crown prince tilted his head. It seems you want to speak now. Pella nodded frantically. I will. The raised sword lowered again, its tip resting against Pella's neck. Go on, tell me. Just as Pella was about to speak, her mind went blank. What could she possibly say? She couldn't tell him she'd chased after him seeking death. And now that she knew the reset arrow didn't exist, she couldn't follow through with her original plan. Should she try opening the options function? But even if she did, it wasn't guaranteed to save her. Before Pella could answer, the crown prince smirked, voicing his thoughts. Judging by your expression, you're trying to concoct an excuse. This is making me rather curious, Lady Pella. You'd better give me a reason I can understand. Pella watched the favorability meter above the crown prince's head flash a dangerous red. Seeing her continued silence, he pressed the blade harder against her skin. Warm blood trickled down her neck. The fear of death and pain consumed her. Pella squeezed her eyes shut and blurted out, I like you. The crown prince's crimson eyes widened in disbelief. Pella's mouth, no longer under her control, continued, I admire you very much. That's why I followed you. I thought you seemed upset about what happened at the banquet, so I wanted to comfort you. Pella inwardly panicked, berating herself for the nonsense she was spouting. She had been terrified at the banquet. Comfort him? Her closed eyelids trembled, bracing for the inevitable pain of death. But the expected blow never came. Cautiously opening her eyes, she heard the crown prince murmuring, The mad dog of the Duke's estate admires the scoundrel of the royal family? What an unexpected excuse. He stared at her with a look of amusement. But we've barely met. We only exchanged words once at my victory banquet. Pella, her body tense, replied, I fell in love with you at first sight, Your Highness. And what do you like about me? The unexpected question left Pella speechless. She quickly fabricated a reason. Because you're handsome, and your swordsmanship is impressive. You're very brave. The crown prince responded with a jaded, That's so cliché. Can't you be a little more original? The crown prince responded with a jaded, That's so cliché. Can't you be a little more original? The cold, sharp sensation against her neck filled Pella with terror. As she fought back tears, the crown prince's laughter grew louder. In a voice brimming with excitement, he said, Fine. Although I'm not entirely satisfied, I'll let you go this time. But next time, you'd better explain clearly why you like me. You can leave now. The blade slowly withdrew from her skin. Pella looked up in stunned relief and saw that the favorability meter above his gleaming golden hair had actually risen to 2%. She found it utterly absurd. The crown prince watched her stand there dumbfounded. Why are you still standing here? Do you want another round of our little neck-slicing game? Pella jumped, then stumbled backward, quickly turning and fleeing. Once around the corner, she broke into a run. The cold wind stung the wound on her neck, but Pella, lost in thought, didn't notice the pain. She had thought dying once would send her back to her original world. But now, realizing there was no reset, wasn't she completely doomed? Her only option was to play this twisted game. But how could she possibly deal with these lunatics? Even if she managed to raise their favorability, it could plummet in an instant. Tears streamed down Pella's face. Why was she in this world, forced to cater to these strangers, even to the point of death? Just a few steps from escaping the garden, in the inky blackness of the night, she collided with someone. In her distraught state, Pella thought the crown prince had come back for her. A wave of terror washed over her. After a quick apology, she tried to escape. Suddenly, her arm was seized in a firm grip. Pella cried out, Let me go. Why do I have to die? I don't want to. I don't want to die. Miss, are you all right? Feeling a hand grip her shoulder, Pella finally came to her senses. A pair of deep blue eyes swam into Pella's vision, wide with surprise. Silvery hair, shimmering faintly, framed a face that bore the unmistakable mark of a 0% favorability rating. That faintly shimmering silver hair, that 0% favorability, was this another one of those people? Another person she had to deal with as part of this dreadful charade? So please calm down. I won't hurt you. The gentle voice cut through Pella's panic, momentarily freezing her. She'd been gasping for breath, struggling to regain her composure, but now, facing the person she'd stumbled into, a wave of despair washed over her. It was Pit Dandy, an earl and a magician. Pella raised a trembling hand to wipe the tears blurring her vision. All she wanted was to go home, to escape this suffocating world, even for just a moment. Roughly drying her eyes, she offered a shaky curtsy. I'm fine. I apologize for my clumsiness. Please excuse my intrusion. She turned to leave, but the Earl stopped her. He gestured towards her neck. You're bleeding, and you're very pale. Let me accompany you to a physician. No, I have to return to the banquet. Then at least take this. Press it against the wound to stop the bleeding. Pella hesitated, studying him for a moment before accepting the proffered handkerchief. She couldn't possibly return to the ballroom in this state. With another curtsy, she murmured, "Thank you. I will certainly repay this kindness." Repayment isn't necessary, but the next time we meet, I hope those beautiful eyes hold no sadness. Back at the brightly lit banquet hall, Pella quickly located Derek. Clutching the handkerchief tightly against her neck, she spoke in a faint voice. Brother, I'm not feeling well. I need to go home. Now, the world abruptly dissolved into darkness. The last image Pella registered was Derek's pale, worried face as he rushed towards her. Then, only the muffled sounds of frantic shouts and hurried footsteps reached her as she slipped into unconsciousness. In the hazy realm between consciousness and oblivion, she thought she was dreaming of her past again, but it wasn't her own memories that surfaced. Instead, she found herself experiencing his past, a painful memory of being tricked and brutally beaten at the aristocratic academy. His tormentors, sons of privilege, taunted him relentlessly, their cruelty fueled by the knowledge that he and his brothers shared a father but not a mother. After enduring the agonizing ordeal, he dragged himself home, only to have the misfortune of encountering his father and brothers. He offered a hurried bow and attempted to escape upstairs, but a sharp stop halted him in his tracks. He tried to ignore his cruel second brother and continue on, but the other boy blocked his path, grabbing his arm and demanding, "What happened to you? Did you get into a fight?" "It's nothing. I fell. How could a fall do this?" "Which damned bastard did this to you?" He wrenched himself free, his voice raw with pain and anger. "Since when did you care about me?" "I said it's nothing. Please, just leave me alone. I just want to be left in peace." His father and other brothers stared, their eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and something else he couldn't quite decipher. They had likely never seen him so defiant. He had always believed that crying was a sign of weakness, of defeat. But in that moment, the dam finally broke. Tears streamed down his face, unchecked sobs racking his body. He cried like a child, no longer caring how they perceived him. A few days later, the bruises around his eyes had begun to fade. His second brother, the cruel one, sought him out. "I found those guys," he announced. "They've been taught a lesson. No one will dare bully you again." "Thank you, brother," he mumbled, the words feeling hollow and forced. What he truly wanted to scream was, "This is all your fault. I'm cleaning up your mess. Why should I have to thank you?" A sudden roar ripped through the quiet. Didn't they say she was all right? Why hasn't she woken up? The noise pierced through the fog in Pella's mind, forcing her heavy eyelids open. "It's too loud," she croaked, her throat dry and scratchy. The person beside her immediately leaned closer. "Hey, you're awake." Everything was blurry, the figure a hazy outline. Oh, right. It was her second brother, that insufferable jerk. A surge of anger, left over from the dream, propelled the words she'd never dared to utter before. "I hate you. I really hate you." "Hate me? I hate you even more. I hate you the most." Exhausted, Pella closed her eyes, a wave of relief washing over her as she slipped back into the welcome embrace of sleep. She didn't see the rigid figure of a pink-haired young man standing beside her bed, his body trembling violently. After 4 long days, Pella finally awoke. "Miss, are you feeling better now?" Pella blinked, her vision focusing on Emily's tear-streaked face. "Do you know how worried I've been? The Duke and the young Duke have been so worried too." "Is that so?" Pella replied perfunctorily. Emily nodded dramatically. "Of course. The Duke carried you back to the manor, his face completely white." Pella was a little surprised. "Big Brother was?" "Yes, the Duke was frantic. He summoned every renowned physician in the city, and the young Duke wanted to contact the Crown Prince at the palace. The butler barely managed to stop him." Listening to Emily's account, Pella was astonished. Emily might have been exaggerating, but even so, the concern they showed was unexpected. It seemed a great deal had happened while she was unconscious. "You've worked so hard, Emily. It was nothing. Please don't say that. I am your personal maid, after all." Pella felt a little bewildered. This girl, now on the verge of tears and proclaiming her devotion, had stuck her with a needle not long ago. "Right, now's not the time for this. I'll go and tell the Duke that you're awake. Bring back some apple nectar when you return." Pella nodded as she spoke, and Emily was already halfway down the hall. After 4 full days of unconsciousness, Pella's complexion was noticeably pale. She ate the sweets Emily brought back and rested in bed. Touching the bandage on her neck, she grumbled about how thick it was. Anyone who saw it would think her neck was broken, not just grazed by an arrow. Still, it wasn't all bad. Playing the invalid for a while might be advantageous. Just then, a knock came at the door. "Miss, it's Panny." It was the butler. Pella frowned. She'd specifically told him to send someone else if he needed something. She still hadn't fully forgiven him, so she sent Emily to answer. The message was unexpected. "Miss, the butler says the Duke has summoned you." Her father. Well, it was the Duke's command. He couldn't very well send another servant to relay it. The last time Pella caused a disturbance at the palace, she was confined to her quarters. How much scolding would she receive today? Barely awake and already summoned for questioning. "Oh, mother, you'd pity me." Barely awake and already summoned for questioning. "Oh, Wolf, you'd pity me." Leaving her room, Pella asked the butler, puzzled, "Don't you usually walk ahead of me?" He bowed. "I am but a humble servant. How could I presume to walk before my mistress? Please, miss, lead the way." His sudden politeness was unsettling. He was like a shopkeeper fawning over a long-absent customer. Walking down the hall, she noticed the servants, who usually whispered and stared, now bowed respectfully whenever their eyes met. Pella didn't know this was thanks to the butler, who trailed behind her, glaring warnings at them. Reaching the Duke's office, the butler announced, "Your Grace, Lady Pella has arrived. Let her in." The butler, once again excessively polite, opened the door for her. Pella stared at the butler, wondering if he'd secretly attended some sort of butler boot camp while she was unconscious. Entering the room, she bowed her head to the Duke. He gestured for her to sit. Pella mentally reviewed the excuses she'd prepared. After a moment of silence, the Duke began to speak. "Today, I called you here because, Father, may I speak first?" Pella interrupted. She stood and knelt, deciding to take the offensive. "I'm sorry. It was all my fault. I didn't reflect enough on my actions during my confinement, and so I caused another disturbance at the royal banquet. I brought shame upon our family." The Duke's face was etched with surprise. "No, wait," Pella continued, her words tumbling out. "I don't dare ask for your forgiveness. I know I was wrong. I'll accept any punishment." The Duke raised his hand, signaling for her to stop. "Enough," he boomed. Had that tactic, which worked so well last time, failed her now? A flicker of worry crossed Pella's mind. Had that tactic, which worked so well last time, failed her now? Pella started to feel a little worried. Taking a deep breath, she replied, "Yes, Father." "Get up." "What?" This was unexpected, and Pella was once again confused. At her questioning look, the Duke's eyebrows shot up. "For whatever reason, a member of the Carleth family does not kneel. Do not debase yourself so casually. Pella, as long as you are a Carleth, no one can make you kneel. Not even royalty. If you understand, get up this instant." Pella quickly rose and sat back on the sofa. As she wondered if she'd said something wrong, the Duke spoke again. "Pella, I didn't call you here to scold you. I simply want to know what happened at the Imperial Palace." Pella's mind raced, recalling her conversation with the Crown Prince a few days prior, the one where he'd nearly killed her. A chill ran down her spine. She decided against fabricating a lie. I was going to the Imperial Garden for some fresh air and happened to encounter His Highness, the Crown Prince. He seemed to be in a rather foul mood, and because he was in a foul mood, he decided to slash your neck. He didn't exactly slash it. That's not slashing. Then what is this on your neck? What kind of scoundrel attacks a duke's daughter simply because they're in a bad mood? The duke roared, his fury palpable. Pella quickly responded to her father's outburst. I provoked His Highness. Good. We can use this incident to our advantage. Make him owe us a favor. You are indeed a worthy member of the Carlith family. Pella felt herself on the verge of madness. Her father's reactions were always so unexpected. The Duke continued, seemingly unfazed. We need to test the Crown Prince's mettle. He's become increasingly arrogant since earning the title of war hero. Panic seized Pella. If these treasonous words were overheard, it could spell disaster for their family. Father, she began, her voice laced with apprehension. You know the Carlith family remains neutral, right? Of course, the Duke replied. Pella responded, of course, but inwardly, her thoughts were a chaotic mess. She hadn't known it all. Even so, without our family support, the Crown Prince will struggle. His influence has waned since the Empress's death, and after he left for the war, the second prince's mother, the imperial concubine, seized control of the palace. Back then, no one knew who would be the next emperor. This was the first time Pella had heard this side of the story. When she played the game before, the story focused solely on romance, nothing else. No wonder the second prince sent assassins after the Crown Prince. It seemed the Crown Prince's outburst at the banquet wasn't entirely unprovoked. The Duke puffed out his chest. This incident is our trump card. You've done exceptionally well. Instead of punishment, you deserve a reward. Is there anything you desire? Reward? Pella stared blankly. Before coming here, she'd only anticipated punishment. A reward hadn't even crossed her mind. Shall I summon the jeweler again? With the change of season approaching, perhaps it's time to discard your old wardrobe and commission a new one. The sheer scale of the proposed reward left Pella speechless. Pella stammered, I'll think about it and let you know. The conversation concluded, and Pella closed the heavy office door behind her. A white notification box popped up, causing her to let out an involuntary, bewildered chuckle. She'd done nothing, yet her relationship with the Duke had improved. Regardless, increasing Halgandu with anyone was a good thing. She had to keep up the good work. Emily rushed to greet her as she entered her room. This is the handkerchief you used to wrap your neck after you fainted. The Duke ordered me to throw it away, but I washed it and kept it, just in case. It was Pit Dandy's handkerchief. Pella had completely forgotten about it. Thank you, Emily. Emily beamed at the praise. Gazing at the handkerchief, Pella knew she had to repay this kindness. He was also one of her capture targets, so another meeting was definitely necessary. She then instructed Emily to summon the jeweler. Is this in preparation for the Founding Day celebration next week? Emily asked excitedly. Celebration? Pella's confusion was met with Emily's swift reply. It's to celebrate the founding of the nation. I hear it's going to be a grand affair this year, with His Highness, the Crown Prince, returning victorious from the war. The mention of the Crown Prince caused Pella's tone to turn icy. Emily gasped and quickly covered her mouth. After dismissing Emily, Pella fell into deep thought. She knew the real story was just beginning to unfold. For instance, the Crown Prince's route only unlocked after completing Derek and Ignis's storylines. That's why, after encountering the Crown Prince, she immediately met Pit Dandy. Only one of the 5 capture targets remained, Ecclese, who hadn't appeared yet. He would be brought to the Duke's manor during the Founding Day celebration. Therefore, she had to act before her father and bring Ecclese back herself. After nearly being killed by the Crown Prince, Pella had made up her mind. If she couldn't die carelessly, she would conquer a route as quickly as possible, and then escape this wretched place. To achieve this, she needed to focus on the easiest target. Pella's eyes gleamed. It's you, she declared. A few days later, Pella was found wandering the Duke's manor. Her true objective? To locate the rumored dog hole leading to the outside world. After multiple unsuccessful searches, Pella asked Emily to fetch some snacks. She settled down beneath a tree with a book. Engrossed in a particularly gripping chapter, Pella heard rustling behind her. Assuming it was Emily returning, she called out for a bookmark. Silence. She called out again, a little louder this time. Looking up, she was startled to see the Duke, Derek, holding Emily's tray of snacks. He immediately asked if she was feeling better. Pella was surprised to see him there. Even more surprising was the fact that his affection level, after several days without interaction, had risen to 8%. After a long pause, Pella finally managed to react, starting to rise to greet him. Derek gestured for her to remain seated. A little disappointed, she asked, "Don't you need those snacks?" He explained that he had something to discuss with her and had brought Emily's snacks along with him. Pella sighed, realizing what this was about. "Is this about what happened at the Imperial Palace the other day? I'm so sorry, young Duke. I must have frightened you. You warned me." She trailed off, bracing herself. "If you're going to punish me." She was cut short by Derek's cool interruption. He said that wasn't what he wanted to talk about. Pella frowned, confused. "Why are you calling me young Duke again?" Seeing her bewilderment, he quickly backtracked. "Never mind. It was my mistake. I came to give you this." With his other hand, Derek retrieved a silk scarf from his pocket and coolly placed it against the scarf already around Pella's neck. "Your reputation is already less than stellar. Don't accept things from strange men. Remember you represent the Towlett family." Pella's jaw nearly dropped. Was he talking about Winter's handkerchief? So he had noticed it was a man's. That's why he'd had Emily throw it away. She had assumed he was here to scold her, not to give her a gift. Carefully accepting the scarf, avoiding skin contact, she noted its luxurious texture, despite the lack of elaborate packaging. Delighted by this unexpected turn of events, Pella offered a genuine thank you. A flicker of something unreadable crossed Derek's face. He abruptly turned, muttering something about being busy, and hurried away with the snack tray. Pella stared after his retreating figure, utterly baffled. His affection level had just jumped to 10%. This game was becoming increasingly difficult to decipher. After days of searching, Pella had finally found the coveted dog hole, the very one the Knights used for their secret excursions. Dusting herself off, she grumbled about the game, not revealing its location. Thankfully, she found it mentioned in an online forum. Her last capture target, Ignis, could only be met at night, requiring a clandestine visit. She silently prayed that this target, the one she was going to such lengths to pursue, wouldn't disappoint her. Just as she was replacing the concealing shrubbery, a sharp voice barked, "What are you doing?" Pella whirled around, startled, to find her rarely seen, venomous older brother, Eccles. His affection level had also increased. Pella felt a pang of frustration. What was it with these brothers? Their affection seemed to rise whenever she wasn't around. Eccles, seeing her stunned silence, pressed her for an answer. Flustered, Pella stammered that she was just taking a walk. Eccles narrowed his eyes, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. "Near the dog hole? How convenient." Anxious to change the subject, Pella retorted, "And what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at the training grounds?" "I just finished training, and I'm heading back to the manor." Eccles proceeded to lift his sweat-soaked shirt to wipe his face. Taking in his handsome features and impressively built physique, Pella couldn't help but think only in a video game. After a quick, appraising once over, she said, "Well, you carry on then. I'll just be strolling." Seemingly reading her mind, Eccles warned, "Don't try anything funny. Have you forgotten the time you followed those lazy knights over the wall and broke your leg? The reason the wall is so high now is because of you. I could write 10 books on my grievances against you. If you want to go out, use the front gate. Don't cause any more trouble." Pella, inwardly lamenting the wall's formidable height, mumbled a denial. Eccles, giving her a final suspicious glare, turned and walked away. As expected, a system window popped up for Pella. Staring at the task and recalling the Crown Prince's blatant rudeness, Pella felt no desire whatsoever to interact with him. Furthermore, the reward was a measly 3% increase in Halgandu, goodwill/affection. Pella selected reject without hesitation. She had absolutely no intention of attending the celebratory banquet with him. Pella selected reject without a second thought. She had no desire to attend the festivities. Night fell. Pella lowered a rope fashioned from bedsheets out the window. Mustering all her strength, she clambered onto the windowsill. Just completing these steps left her breathless. It was the first day of the festivities. To be safe, she wore a large cloak. She also carried a reward she'd requested from the Duke, a blank check. Now, all she had to do was get down safely. Halfway down, panic set in. The rope was shorter than she'd anticipated. Jumping would surely wake everyone. Her grip on the sheets tightened, her hands trembling. Trapped and helpless, she gasped. Suddenly, a startled voice called out from below, "What are you doing?" Pella looked down to see Icklese staring up at her, as if she were a lunatic. Confused as to why Icklese was there, she heard him say incredulously, "What do you mean? What am I doing here? My room is right below yours. Are you running away from home?" Pella, startled by his question, stammered, What? Running away? I just want to go for a walk." Panicked and exhausted, she swayed precariously, clinging to the rope. Icklese, his face pale with alarm, rushed to the window. "Let go," he urged. "I'll catch you." Though skeptical, Pella saw no other option. She took a deep breath and let go. Oof! Hearing the sound, Pella opened her eyes. She found herself face to face with a smirking Icklese. Flustered, she demanded he put her down. Watching Pella straighten her robes, Icklese casually inquired, "Where were you planning on going?" Pella, equally nonchalant, replied, "Just a stroll. I wanted to see the festivities." Seeing Ickles's obvious disbelief, Pella retorted sharply, "I told you not to interfere with my affairs. I'm an adult." Icklese, seemingly unconvinced about her going out alone at night, said, "Fine, I won't tell father. But I'm coming too." This left Pella speechless. She hesitantly began, "But you hate me." Before she could finish, Icklese interrupted, "Who said I hate you? You're the one who hates me." Pella frantically put a finger to her lips. Hissing, "Be quiet," she quickly glanced around. Thankfully, no one had overheard. Lowering her voice, she frowned. "Even if that were true, why would you say it so loudly?" She fumed inwardly. When had she ever said such a thing? Icklese remained firm. "Even if you don't want me to, I'm still coming." Meanwhile, a new system task appeared. Upon closer inspection, it was the same task she had rejected earlier. Pella sighed. It seemed she had no choice. She agreed to let Icklese accompany her. Having cleared the bushes around the dog hole, they were about to exit when a voice boomed, "What are you two doing?" They jumped, turning to see Derek glaring at them. Before Pella could explain, Icklese interjected, "Pella wanted to see the festivities. I'm acting as her knight, preventing her from causing trouble and protecting her." Under Derek's scrutinizing gaze, Pella hung her head, thinking, "I'm doomed. My plan to capture my final target, Ignis, is ruined." Then, Derek stated coldly, "There's an unspoken rule. Noble escorts always travel in pairs. I'll go with you." His unexpected words made Pella look up. Not surprisingly, another system task popped up. Reading the task, which involved viewing the festivities with Derek, Pella could only manage a strained smile. Arriving at the bustling streets, Pella, accustomed to grand celebrations, found the crowded scene utterly uninteresting. Noticing her disinterest, Icklese asked, "Hey, are you sure you came here to see the festivities?" Pella glanced at him and replied indifferently, "Aren't I looking?" Icklese gestured towards the various stalls, puzzled. "Why don't you want to buy anything? I thought you loved trinkets." Pella, tuning out the chatter around her, focused on her true objective, locating her final target. Suddenly, Lena grabbed her hand, pulling her towards a glittering display of jewelry. "These look nice," Lena commented, and the stall owner, seeing potential customers, launched into an enthusiastic sales pitch. Observing Pella feigning interest, Lena urged her to pick something out. All the while, Derek, who had been squatting silently behind them, spoke up, "This one's nice." He picked up a gemstone pendant from the stall. The vendor, effusive, exclaimed, My, sir, you clearly have an eye for quality." This pendant, crafted with Eastern gemstones, took 3 months of meticulous day and night labor to create. Pella, noticing the pendant's color resembled her own paintings, wondered if that was Derek's reason for choosing it. Maintaining her charade of interest, she picked up a mask that caught her eye. A strange silence fell over the group after Pella's selection. Lena, leaning in conspiratorially, whispered, "Have you been feeling all right lately? Do you ever get dizzy spells or find yourself disoriented?" Pella curtly replied, "If you don't want to buy anything, just say so." After Lena, with a dubious look, confirmed Pella's choice of the mask and reluctantly paid. A commotion erupted in the distance. People surged into the streets from all directions, jostling Pella as they rushed past. Looking up in the chaos, Pella saw Derek, his face impassive, reach out a hand for her to grasp. But the moment was fleeting. The throng swept her away. She watched Derek's startled face recede into the distance. When she finally regained her bearings, she found herself in a chillingly dark alley, clutching a gold cufflink she'd ripped from Derek's sleeve. As Pella looked around, a white system box materialized before her eyes. Reading the task, her jaw dropped in surprise. So, suddenly, I thought those two would mess it up. I can't believe it was that easy. Following the incident, she was immediately transported to the entrance of the slave market. A queue had already formed at the entrance, everyone masked. Pella felt a surge of relief. Purchasing the mask had been a stroke of genius. Soon it was her turn. "Your invitation, please," a hulking guard demanded, extending his hand. An invitation? Pella stammered, caught off guard. "I didn't realize one was required." The guard explained that the event was for members only. "Wait, just a moment." At the mention of members, Pella quickly produced the gold cufflink. "I seem to have forgotten my invitation. Will this suffice?" The guard, recognizing the family crest, his eyes widening, immediately stepped aside and granted her passage. Feigning nonchalance, Pella entered, inwardly marveling at the Pallet family's influence. Perhaps it was more than just influence. Following an attendant down a shadowy passage, she emerged into a vast, opulent space. She could hardly believe such a grand hall existed within the dilapidated exterior. Shortly after she was seated, the auction began. Slaves, bound in chains, were brought onto the stage as the auctioneer announced their arrival. Pella watched with detached curiosity until the final slave appeared. Then she sat up straighter. "A barbarian from a conquered nation. Allow me to introduce Bentris." Pella's gaze fixed on a man whose hands were bound with gauntlets and neck fitted with a slave collar. Despite his restraints, his eyes, meeting the audience's, held a fierce, captivating spark. This was her fifth target. The auctioneer continued, a smile playing on his lips. "I'm sure you've all heard the rumors, but seeing is believing, which is why we've arranged this special demonstration for our esteemed guests. Behold." As Pella puzzled over his words, 5 ferocious hounds were released onto the stage. Ickley's hands and feet were bound by iron chains, restricting most of his movements. A small wooden sword was his only weapon. Pella's heart skipped a beat. They seemed intent on letting Ickley face those ravenous-looking beasts. She wondered if she should buy him before he was torn apart. With lightning speed, Ickley took down the hounds one after another. The last hound crumpled to the ground, its slowly pooling blood marking the end of the brutal fight. Blood dripped from Ickley's fingertips, his chest heaving. A hush fell over the crowd, followed by a wave of cheers. Invigorated by the bloodshed, Ickley sneered at those who approached to subdue him, brandishing his wooden sword. Later, they fitted him with restraints to control his movements. Chuckling, the auctioneer soothed the startled audience and began the bidding. The auction for Ickley had officially begun, his starting price on a completely different scale from the other slaves. Pella focused, a nervous tension thrumming through her. As time passed, the number of bidders dwindled. Few were willing to pay a high price for a slave from a conquered nation, especially one so seemingly untamable. After confirming no one else intended to bid higher, Pella finally raised her hand from the side of the bidding platform. A hush fell over the crowd. The gazes directed at her would have been deafeningly loud if they were voices. The auctioneer stuttered, blinking several times as if in disbelief. Then, with a flourish, he called out, 100 million. We have a bid for 100 million. Any more bids? From the start, Pella had decided to bid 10 times the final amount. This was a matter of life and death, after all. Whether it was 100 million or 1 billion, she would pay it with a smile. Whether it was 100 million or 1 billion, she would pay it with a smile. Sold for 100 million. After the auction, the auctioneer personally escorted her to where the slaves were held. Several guards stood before Ickley, far more than necessary. Each guard held a whip, lashing it across Ickley's skin. Pella pulled a check from her pocket and tossed it to the auctioneer, instructing him to collect the money from the Carlith family. The auctioneer then handed her a ring set with a large ruby. Pella stared at it, unsure of its purpose, as the auctioneer pointed in a certain direction. "If you press the ruby on the ring," he explained, "the yellow bead on Ickley's collar will emit an electric shock. It'll subdue him instantly. It won't take long to kill him, so be careful." Just then, a scream pierced the air. Pella looked up in alarm to see Ickley had seized a guard by the throat. The auctioneer, his face pale, ordered the guards to continue whipping Ickley. Though reluctant to use the ring, Pella pressed the ruby to prevent him from being beaten to death. Ickley collapsed, his body convulsing. While he was incapacitated, Lena approached him where he lay prostrate on the ground. The auctioneer, nervous and afraid, tried to pull Pella back, but it didn't stop her from approaching Ickley. He stared intently at Pella, his expression clearly showing his immense pain. As she drew closer, the 0% affection rating above his head shimmered ominously. Crouching before him, Pella tilted his chin up. As she called his name, his dangerous gaze met hers. Removing her mask, Pella reminded Eccles that she was the one who had paid 100 million gold coins for him. His pale gray eyes widened. Perhaps he hadn't expected someone as beautiful as Pella to appear in such a place. Holding his gaze, Pella spoke firmly. I didn't buy you because I have money to burn. Even a mad nobleman wouldn't pay the price of a city for a single slave. Even if you escape from here, what will you do? I hate those who overestimate themselves. You need to prove your worth. Don't make me regret spending this money. Otherwise, I'll send you right back here. Understand? Otherwise, I'll send you right back here. Understand? Nod if you understand. I need to get home quickly. Seeing the slight nod, Pella stood, donned her mask, and turned her head to signal Pan Lu. The master removed Eccles' shackles. Though the others present bristled with disapproval, under Pella's imposing gaze, they reluctantly obeyed. Tossing down a bag of gold coins, she ordered one of the attendants to clothe the near-naked Eccles. Minutes later, a now properly dressed Eccles followed Pella out of the auction hall. As Pella pondered how best to return to the palace discreetly, a group of people who had been lingering nearby surged forward, blocking their path. A short, stout man pushed through the crowd, stopping before Pella. Warily she asked, "Who are you?" The man responded with an incredulous, forced chuckle, followed by a series of strained laughs. "You dare ask who I am? I'm a legendary." He trailed off, nudged by a companion who whispered a reminder not to reveal his identity. Clearing his throat, the man declared, "I am Li Xing. Give me that slave." At this, Pella finally recognized the man. A protective instinct made her pull Eccles back slightly. "Did you forget I just paid a fortune for him?" The man's face flushed crimson. I didn't bring enough money today. I'll give you 10 million gold coins now. I'll pay the rest next week." Pella lifted her chin, assuming a haughty air. "From the start, I intended to pay 10 times the final bid, no matter the amount. If you bid 100 million, I would have offered 1 billion. The stout man began to bellow at Pella. "Don't be ridiculous. This is absurd. You're being unreasonable." "Unreasonable? I should be asking who you think you are." Just as she reached to remove her mask, a hand shot out, aiming a slap at her face. "You impudent little brat." Just as Pella prepared to dodge the blow, the man let out a blood-curdling shriek. Eccles had smoothly stepped forward, placing himself between Pella and the attacker. He began to systematically dismantle the group with brutal efficiency. Watching the carnage unfold before her, Pella was stunned by Eccles' ferocious fighting prowess. A shiver of fear ran down her spine. She had just threatened him? The suffocating scene reminded her of the banquet of the crown prince casually beheading Lord Namu. The thought brought a wave of nausea, the coppery tang of blood thick in the air. The sickening display, thankfully, didn't last long. The man who had been so boisterous moments before now sat rigidly on the ground, stunned into silence. Eccles, slightly unsteady on his feet, approached Pella. The mangled remains of his shackles dangled from his wrist, dripping a viscous trail of blood. Pella trembled as Eccles knelt before her. He gently took one of her hands in both of his, raising it to his face. With an earnest expression, he said, "Master, I've taken care of them. Praise me." Pella stared blankly at the top of his head, noticing his affection level at 18%. She didn't notice, however, that the hand Eccles held was the one bearing her ruby ring. By the time Pella and Eccles returned to the mansion, dawn had broken. The butler and Emily rushed towards her. "Miss Pella, where were you last night?" Emily finished the butler's unfinished question, her voice laced with worry. Judging by their expressions, sneaking Eccles into the mansion would be impossible. She also learned that the Duke and her 2 brothers had been searching for her all night. The slave trader's arrival early that morning to collect his payment only added to Pella's mounting headache. Hiding Eccles was difficult enough without this added chaos. As she attempted to enter the mansion, the butler stepped forward, blocking Eccles. "Who is this?" he inquired. "From now on, he is my personal knight. Arrange suitable accommodations for him." The butler looked Eccles up and down, taking in his battered appearance and the remnants of his slave attire. clearly disapproving. "My lady, this." Pella cut him off. "Butler, it seems you've forgotten my words again after only a few days. I'm very tired. Please, just find him a place to stay." The butler bowed his head resignedly and retreated. Stepping into the mansion's lower level, Lena, a vibrant blur of nervous energy in the hallway, was the first to notice Pella. The Duke, seated upstairs, shot to his feet at Lena's cry. Under his sharp, beautiful gaze, Pella involuntarily stopped in her tracks. "Father wants to see me in his office. Now." Pella couldn't help but pause. "Father wants to see me in his office immediately." Watching the Duke's retreating back, Pella sighed heavily. "I'm doomed." Another lecture. Just then, she noticed Eclise behind her. He was striding towards the south exit of the mansion. "Who is that beggar?" she demanded of the butler. "Eclise," the butler replied. Pella urged him to stop Eclise, fearing the situation would escalate. "Who allowed him to leave with the butler? Does he even know where this is? Bring him back." Lena's expression suggested she had much to say. Eclise, turning back, seemed to share the sentiment, but neither spoke. Pella had to go to the Duke's office immediately. As Pella entered the office, a cold, sharp voice cut through the air. Pella Callie. It was her father. The Duke's voice, heavy with displeasure, continued. "Explain yourself. What is the meaning of this?" The Duke's tone made Pella tremble. After a moment of frantic thought, she decided to try her usual tactic. "I apologize for leaving without telling you." "I hear your apologies often," the Duke replied, "but I find they are rarely followed by changed behavior. I swear, I haven't done anything to disgrace the family." At Pella's response, the Duke slammed his fist on the desk. "Get to the point, Pella Callie. I haven't stayed up all night to listen to this." It was the first time Pella had seen him this angry. His unexpected fury left her speechless. "Pella Callie, why were you alone, without guards, in an alley in the middle of the night?" Seeing Pella shrink under his harsh words, the Duke sighed. His voice softened slightly. "What happened last night?" Pella let out a small sigh. If the Duke was asking, further apologies were clearly pointless. "I wanted to see the festival. I knew you wouldn't approve, so I went secretly." The Duke was silent for a long moment. Then, in a low voice, he prompted her to continue. Pella recounted the events of the previous night, carefully omitting her visit to the slave market. When she described being accosted in the alley, the Duke shot up from his chair. "Who touched you, Pella?" Pella, remembering her panic, admitted, "I was too frightened. I didn't see his face. I only heard him say something about Crewy." Seeing the Duke sink back into his chair, muttering to himself, Pella's anxiety spiked. Fearing what he might do, she quickly added, "Anyway, Eclise was passing by and saved me." "Eclise? The man you brought here today?" "Yes, he had escaped from the slave market." At the word slave, the Duke's brow furrowed. Pella hastily explained, "He's a nobleman from a conquered nation." The Duke's expression relaxed somewhat, but his disapproval was still evident. "Pella, I gave you a blank check, not to buy slaves." Pella began to protest, arguing she couldn't abandon her savior, when the door burst open with a loud bang. A frantic Derek, pale and sweating, rushed in. "Where have you been?" He strode into the room, his face a mask of worry, and fixed Pella with an intense stare. Pella, flustered, stammered, "Brother, I was talking to Father." Before she could finish, Derek grabbed her shoulders and shook her. "I've been searching the entire city all night, even the brothels in the back alleys. I was terrified you'd been kidnapped." Pella was stunned. She had never seen such an expression on his face. Confused, she thought, "Doesn't he hate me? Why is he so worried?" Pella recalled the desperate look in his eyes as he tried to grab her hand before they were separated at the festival. "Derek," the Duke snapped, stopping Derek's tirade. "What are you doing? Barging in here without knocking while I'm talking to her." Derek's expression flickered for a second. He released Pella's shoulders, stepped back, and bowed to the Duke. "I apologize, Father." Derek then moved silently behind the Duke, his gaze, like his father's, fixed intently on Pella, waiting for her explanation. The Duke cleared his throat. "Answer me. I understand you bought him, but why not just free him? Why bring him home?" He seemed to have accepted Pella's fabricated story without further question. Pella, having carefully composed her words, spoke slowly. "I hope you will accept him as one of your knights. He's highly skilled, which is why he was so expensive. He's highly skilled, so he will be very useful in the future. All he needs is formal swordsmanship training." At that moment, Derek interrupted. "Even running errands for our family is considered an honor by many. He's not even a commoner." and you want to give that slave swordsmanship training. Pella, fighting off exhaustion, replied, I want him as my personal guard. Your personal guard? I can't live my whole life without a guard. The Duke's eyes widened further. What do you mean by that? The Dukedom has over 20,000 knights at your disposal. Yes, but I know that those knights have a very poor impression of me. Isn't that why you haven't assigned any of them as my guard? Hearing this, both men fell silent. Pella continued, I don't want to entrust my life to someone who doesn't want to protect me. Once I leave this house, you can't guarantee that something like last night won't happen again. Leave. The two men practically shouted the word in unison. The Duke asked anxiously, What do you mean, leave? As I just said, I'm an adult. Seeing their reaction, Pella's eyes widened slightly. Then she bowed her head. Please let me choose my own personal guard. I beg you, father, brother. Pella's voice dropped to a near whisper as she pleaded with them. The two men remained silent. Honestly, Pella's need for a guard was just an excuse. She just needed a reason to keep Ecclese at the mansion. Fortunately, the plan seemed to be working. After a moment of silence, the Duke slowly spoke. All right, you must be tired. Go upstairs and rest. I'll have the physician check on you when you wake up. Thank you, father. With that, Pella bowed and backed towards the door. Derek, you stay here. Hearing this, Pella glanced back curiously. Seeing Derek about to follow her, she thought, what is going on with this guy? Pella quickly closed the door. She could finally breathe a sigh of relief and rest. A white window suddenly appeared before her eyes. Mission reminder. Attend the festival with Derek. Mission challenge failed. Retry? What? Although the festival was still days away, Pella clicked the decline option. She absolutely did not want to go to another festival with him. Absolutely not. Although the mission failed, Derek's favorability rating had increased by 3%. As expected, to win over these brothers, I need to avoid them. As she walked towards the stairs, she reminded herself to avoid contact with those two at all costs. But then, she saw Reynold rudely questioning Ecclese. Pella frowned and walked towards them. What are you doing? Reynold turned and asked, Who is this guy? Pella looked at the numbers above their heads. Like Derek, Reynold's favorability had increased by 3% since their last encounter. Ecclese, however, was a shining 18%. Pella, without hesitation, chose Ecclese and instructed him to stand behind her. Seeing this, Reynold furrowed his brow. He let out an exasperated sigh. Didn't you hear, Emily? He's my personal guard from now on. Personal guard? You're using a magician as your personal guard? Are you out of your mind? And you even brought this guy back here. Have you forgotten what everyone says about you? Pella, feeling like she might collapse from exhaustion at any moment, turned her back to him and said wearily, I'm tired. We'll talk later. But as she tried to take a step, he blocked her path. As Pella tried to leave, Reynold immediately stopped her. In that instant, Pella felt Ecclese tense behind her, radiating a sharp, almost hostile energy. He raised a hand and stopped Reynold. Pella couldn't let him get kicked out of the mansion within just an hour. She just had to keep Ecclese's hand steady for 5 minutes. Reynold yelled, You need a personal guard? Don't you spend all day locked in your room, doing whatever? There are so many of them. Just pick one. I don't need someone who's going to pry and question me with enough material to fill 10 books. Reynold's expression mirrored that of the Duke and Derek, his lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. Do you really think those knights, who clearly don't respect or like me, are going to protect me when I'm in danger? I was lucky yesterday. If it weren't for Ecclese, I'd be a corpse in an alleyway right now. Reynold looked as if someone was choking him, his face paling considerably. I'm sorry for making you worry, brother, Pella said, then, ignoring Derek, who was waiting in place, walked directly towards the staircase. The system popped up again before him, suggesting he participate in the basic mission with Reynold. Having already failed that challenge, Pella immediately chose to decline. Ecclese, like a loyal puppy, followed lightly behind him through the hallway until they reached Pella's room. Why do you keep following me? Pella tilted her head. Without hesitation, Ecclese replied, To prove my worth. Pella was taken aback by his answer. It seems you really hate the slave market. Then she noticed the ring on her own hand and the yellow beaded necklace around Ecclese's neck. She suddenly remembered the item that compelled his obedience. Pella began to suspect that the necklace was the real reason Ecclese was following her. She couldn't be fooled by his seemingly innocent facade. This was someone who had repelled a group of thugs with only a wooden sword. Reminding herself of this, Pella spoke again. This doesn't include being a servant in my room. You heard the conversation earlier, didn't you? I brought you here to be my personal guard. Your first task is to gain the acceptance of everyone in this mansion. Iklis nodded in response. Pella continued, her voice cold. I want you to understand. I can't argue with anyone for someone who holds no value in this house. Pella's words felt too dismissive, so she added, I believe you won't disappoint me, right? Iklis slowly nodded at her question. Pella saw a glint in his gray eyes. And in that moment, Iklis' affection level shifted, becoming 20%. When will it reach 30%? When will it rise even more so I can see the ending? The thought of the long road ahead exhausted Pella. Emily escorted Iklis to the room the Duke had assigned him. Just then, a dry, warm voice sounded. Master, I will do my utmost to earn your praise. Pella reached out and patted his seemingly dull hair. Iklis, in turn, nuzzled his head against Pella's palm. Though it wasn't enough to completely dispel her fear of him, Pella trusted her choice. She believed she could successfully escape the game. Master, I'm glad it was you who saved me. Master, I'm glad it was you who saved me. These words solidified Pella's resolve for her next plan. Since Iklis returned to the mansion, Pella hadn't left her room. The outward explanation was that she needed ample rest. Derek and the Duke, after hearing Pella's fabricated explanation that day, didn't expel Iklis from the mansion. They didn't give any instructions to Pella while she remained in her room. But Pella learned from Emily that the Duke had recently been investigating every noble family for anyone associated with Crewy. This news sent a chill down her spine. A few days later, warm sunlight pierced through the window, shining brightly into the room. Thankfully, after completing the mission to save Iklis, a period of peaceful respite had arrived. Even if Pella spent all day sleeping, eating, or reading, no one would disturb her. Knock, knock. Emily entered the room carrying a tray. For lunch, we have prepared pumpkin gratin and fried chicken legs. This is too bland, Pella said, not hiding her disappointment. Emily tilted her head in confusion. Miss, your tastes seem to have changed. You're now actively seeking spicy food. People always say that food preferences change as you grow up. That's true, Emily replied, seemingly accepting Pella's explanation without suspicion. She nodded and continued. Please enjoy your meal, Mississippi. But even so, Pella remained cautious. As she ate the sweet melon preserves, Emily spoke. The head butler asked me to inform you that the items you ordered from the jeweler have arrived. Do you recall requesting a jeweler to come to the mansion before the celebration began? Only after Emily mentioned it did Pella remember the incident. She had completely forgotten about it. Emily asked, would you like me to bring them to you now? Pella nodded slightly. Yes, bring them now. Emily quickly returned with a box, a swan-shaped box crafted from a material that looked incredibly expensive. When the deep, sapphire blue gem within revealed its lustrous form, Emily gasped in awe. Is this top-quality lapis lazuli cufflink for the Duke? Emily inquired. Pella hastily denied this, instructing her, I have a discreet errand that requires a runner. I need someone to do it for me. Someone to run an errand for me. Do you happen to know any information brokers in the merchant district? An information broker? Emily tilted her head, then replied, I'm not very familiar with that sort of thing, but my roommate might know. She worked in the merchant district before coming here. Pella paused for a moment, then asked, what's her name? Her name is Raina. She does know a lot of things, but she's not very discreet. Running errands is something she's much better at. As Emily spoke, she watched Pella's expression. She seemed afraid of being replaced by another maid. All right, I'll trust you this once. I'll decide whether or not to cover for your injury based on your performance. From now until my confinement ends, after you attend to me in the mornings, you will suspend your injury reports. Afterward, you will commission them to find someone for me. I will write down all the information I have about him, so those information brokers can find him. The gems in this jewelry box are yours to handle. Use them to pay the information broker's fees. But you mustn't commission just any information broker who finds people. Go to a place that specializes in trading rare information and items. The kind of high-class information broker frequented by the nobility. Yes, I understand. Leave it to me. In the game, It said that Winter has numerous data points. One of the strongholds he runs is said to be the largest and most famous shop, so you should be able to find that place easily. Pella already knew that this individual held the titles of both Marquis and Cat Mage. They were the ones who retrieved Jean Chunny's clothes. After the clothes were returned to the Cowlett family, she kept searching for the benefactor who helped her return to her birth family. The only thing she knew about him was that he was a magician wearing a rabbit mask. Pella didn't want to be like the female protagonist in normal mode, attending every banquet just to meet Winter. Pella spoke again, and one more thing. Don't let them realize you're a maid serving a high-ranking noble. Make them think you're just an ordinary noble lady secretly searching for someone she fell in love with at first sight. Emily jumped at Pella's whispered words. Just then, a knock echoed from the door. Come in. The butler cautiously opened the door and bowed. An invitation from the Imperial Palace has arrived for Miss Pella. For me. Pella tilted her head in confusion. Yes, Mississippi. On the final day of the festivities, there will be a simple, triumphal banquet. I hear His Highness the Crown Prince himself will be hosting this banquet. The butler's prompt reply caused Pella to turn and look at him, stiff as a statue. The Crown Prince, a silence fell. The words Crown Prince hung in the air like a curse. The scrapes on Pella's neck had long since healed, but just the thought of that man's voice made them ache faintly. Without a perfect excuse, Pella couldn't refuse an invitation from the Imperial Palace. What did Father say about this? The butler hesitated. That only you receive the invitation. Therefore, the Duke is not yet aware of this matter. Pella couldn't pretend this was no big deal. He's completely mad, that bastard. He's even crazier than he appeared in the game. That bastard hasn't forgotten me. Forget it? This is clearly deliberate. The next time we meet, he'll have to tell me exactly why he's obsessed with me. Remembering the chilling words he'd whispered in her ear, Pella shivered involuntarily. So, what shall we do about the invitation, miss? The butler inquired cautiously. What else can we do? Pella ran a hand through her hair and sighed. Pella sat back down in her chair and reclined. Tell him I'm ill, butler. I have a high fever. The butler's composure faltered for a moment, but only a moment. What a misfortune that our miss has fallen so ill. Is it due to a cold? Worthy of a professional who had worked in the mansion for 10 years. The butler quickly regained his composure and inquired about the cause. It would be better if you could say it's an after effect of that accident. I understand, Mississippi. The butler bowed politely and left the room. Emily, her voice laced with worry, asked, Miss, are you all right? Should I send for a doctor? Pella initially intended to refuse, but then changed her mind. Yes, send for a doctor. Let the rumor of my illness spread, at least until the Crown Prince forgets about me. Over the next few days, Emily reported to Pella, they were all rather unenthusiastic until I showed them the jewelry box. Their attitudes changed immediately. Emily continued, updating Pella on what had transpired during her 2-day trip to the information brokers. Emily's report continued until she mentioned a peculiar detail, a strange place where, aside from a single individual wearing a rabbit-eared mask, there was no one else. Good, Pella said. It's just as the game predicted. The fish has taken a bait. You've worked hard, Emily, especially in this rain. You can go back and rest now. Emily replied, Yes, Mississippi. I'll return by dinner time. Silence descended upon the room once more. Pella turned towards the window, the world outside shrouded in a veil of gray clouds. As a child, Pella had envied her friends, their mothers always there with umbrellas to shield them from the rain. She remembered the sting of other children's cruel questions as she crossed the playing field, soaked to the bone. Don't you have a mother? Each time, she had been consumed by embarrassment and shame. Suddenly, a memory, sharp and unwelcome, intruded upon her thoughts. A boy's petulant voice. Hurry up, driver. The forecast didn't say anything about rain. Now I'm completely soaked. This is so annoying. Then a secretary's hurried reply. Mr. Lee, let's just go home quickly, followed by the boy's dismissive retort. What about her? Who cares? She'll find her own way back. Just start the car, the boy had snapped. The roar of the engine fading into the distance. How irritating, Pella muttered, shaking her head, trying to dispel the melancholic memory. Rising to her feet, Pella felt the urgency to act. She yearned to escape this cursed game. Grabbing an umbrella, she left her room. The Duke's mansion, cloaked in a misty gray shroud, was eerily quiet. Pella walked slowly through the gardens, letting her steps guide her. Unconsciously, she found herself in a familiar place. The sound of a sword slicing through the air reached her from somewhere nearby. Even in the rain, they were training. Pella had heard that the knight's training regime had intensified. She wondered if Achilles was among them. Drawn by the sound, she approached, but strangely, no one was there, except for a lone figure in the corner, wielding his sword. Shirtless, he moved with a mechanical precision, each swing a blur of motion. His back and arms were a tapestry of scars, varying in size and depth. He was a captivating sight, both brutal and strangely poignant. He must be cold, Pella thought. The man seemed oblivious to her approach. Then, with lightning speed, he turned. Pella blinked, suddenly aware of something cold pressed against her neck. Achilles, chest heaving, stared down at her. As recognition dawned in his eyes, the murderous intent that had radiated from him began to soften. He looked panicked. The killing intent vanished, replaced by a trembling fear that made him appear even more vulnerable. The cold wooden sword remained poised against her throat. Feigning composure, Pella spoke. "It's still raining, Achilles. Perhaps you could remove this first? It's rather cold." At the sound of her voice, he jerked his hand back, raising the sword high above his head before bringing it down with a violent crack against the ground. The broken wooden sword lay in two pieces. Achilles abruptly dropped to his knees, sinking into the mud. He looked wretched, like a child on the verge of tears. "Master, I'm sorry. How could I dare to point my sword at you? Please punish me." Rainwater dripped from his nose and chin, making him appear even more pitiful. But Pella noticed his gaze fixed on the deep red gemstone ring on her left index finger. She sighed softly. If this were a game, she thought, I would have absurdly died in this scene, forced to replay it endlessly. What would the old anemone have done to survive this? A girl who, in a single day, lost her country, her nobility, and was sold into slavery. She must have felt utterly despairing. And so, she learned to suppress her true desires, feigning friendliness towards the haughty, noble girl she loathed. Should she, like the typical heroine, pretend she hadn't seen the murderous glint in his eyes and simply brush it off with a casual, "It's all right. It's no big deal." But no matter how she forced herself to speak, she couldn't utter a single word. She had nearly died under his wooden sword. Pella clenched her fists. She had to act friendly. "Achilles," she began, "is someone giving you a hard time? Why are you still training in this weather?" Pella forced a smile, tilting her umbrella slightly towards him, trying to shield him from the rain. "You're soaked. Who is so bold as to make you train in this weather?" Hearing Pella's voice, Achilles' expression shifted from blank impassivity to a stunned bewilderment. He gasped. "No one," he replied. "No one made me do this. I just want to become an official knight quickly, so I can be by master's side as soon as possible. That's why I'm training alone." His answer brought a gentle smile to Pella's face. "That's commendable. You deserve a reward for your hard work. Should I have them build a pavilion for you? That way, you won't get rained on while you train. Or, is there anything else you desire?" Achilles silently shook his head. Pella glanced at his broken wooden sword. "All right, I'll get you a new sword. This one is broken, after all." Achilles interrupted her. "I wish Master would visit me more often." His unexpected request left Pella speechless. "Master hasn't visited me since leaving me here. I thought Master had forgotten me." Pella scoffed inwardly at his words, unsure whether she was mocking him or herself. Pella finally understood the dissonance she felt. He could tear a person apart like a machine, yet here he was, kneeling before her with such ease. It was as if she, to gain his favor, had chosen to wear the mask of a benevolent master, and Achilles, to survive, had chosen the mask of a loyal dog. She had foolishly thought that her path to winning over Achilles wouldn't be as fraught with danger as the others. She had complacently believed it. He hadn't even suspected. But even so, there was no turning back now. "If you wish, you can visit me anytime." At Pella's reply, Achilles smiled. In the cold air, Pella could see his breath trembling. "You'll catch a cold, Achilles. Training is over for today. That's an order." Just as Pella turned to leave, Achilles called out to her. Pella glanced back, seeing him still kneeling. He made no attempt to rise, simply watching her. "I almost hurt you." Pella's heart lurched. Not almost. He almost killed her, despite her trembling lips. Pella forced a smile. "Achilles, punishing a loyal knight over some trivial matter is something only a fool would do. And you didn't do it on purpose, right?" Pella didn't give him a chance to answer, quickly walking away. She knew his gaze followed her until she disappeared from his sight, and thankfully, he didn't interrupt her departure again. Pella walked quickly, not caring that her skirt was getting wet. She understood now. Achilles' route was not safe. In truth, it wasn't entirely unexpected. She needed to meet with Pat quickly. She needed to secure her safety. In the blink of an eye, news arrived from Emily about the task she had been given. "Miss, this is the information you requested." Pella accepted the letters and examined their contents one by one. "Is this all?" Pella asked, gesturing to the list attached to the letters. Emily glanced at the list, answering nervously. They said, "Miss, that if you could provide more clues about the person, it would naturally be better. They could also, try other merchant groups." Pella shook her head at Emily. She hadn't been looking for a person anyway. The tension in Emily's face eased somewhat. "Of all the merchant groups we've visited so far," she began, "only the one with the rabbit mask hasn't responded yet." Pella felt a pang of disappointment about Winter's lack of action. She had thought Pat would take the bait immediately. Now, it seemed she would have to attend every party he might possibly show up at. Then, Pella offered the remaining jewels to Emily. Emily, however, suddenly panicked, shaking her head in vehement refusal. Remembering something, Pella said to her, "Don't worry. I'll have your contract regarding that needle destroyed." Emily's refusal only intensified. "There's no need for that." Seeing Pella's puzzled frown, Emily explained her desire to become Pella's true confidant, a true, loyal lady-in-waiting. "But why should you trust me?" At Pella's prompting, Emily declared confidently, "You can keep that needle. If I ever act suspiciously, you can give it to the Duke. This is my earnest pledge." Emily nodded emphatically. As Emily knelt before her, Pella considered the situation. This was unexpected. A mercenary who only completes tasks for the appropriate reward, a character not in my plans, has decided to side with me. Is this part of the game's storyline? Pella didn't dwell on it for long. "Put the jewels, along with the remaining ones, back where they belong." Emily, her face alight with emotion, responded, "Thank you, miss. Thank you, miss. From now on, I swear I will serve you with all my might." Emily's thanks continued unabated until Pella, growing weary, waved her away. As Emily left the room, a system dialog box popped up. Relationship with the mansion staff improved. Reputation increased. Having decided from the beginning to forego reputation and focus solely on increasing favorability, Pella needed a moment to prepare. After all, she was following the client's route. "All right, let's go." As the blinding white light gradually dissipated, she appeared in a darkened alley. A rabbit was carved into a shabby, unremarkable door. From her gaming experience, she knew this was Pat's Merchant Guild. Pella approached, and as her hand hovered in midair, about to knock, the door slowly creaked open on its own. A chill ran down Pella's spine. She felt as if she were being watched. The interior was just as it was in the game: a desk, a bookcase, and a sofa for guests. However, the person she was looking for was nowhere to be seen. Had he gone out? Pella had rushed here almost immediately after the rabbit had left. Seeing the empty office, she considered returning to the mansion. But then she thought, since she was already here, she might as well wait. Suddenly, a tremor accompanied by a loud noise came from somewhere within the building. Pella jumped up from the sofa, stumbling slightly, but managing to catch the armrest. Pella glanced out the window. Outside, everything was peaceful, as if nothing had happened. Then, she noticed a rectangular arc on the wall. Looking closer, she realized it wasn't a line, but a crack in the wall. How did it open? There were no visible latches or mechanisms. As she ran her hand along the wall, searching for a way to open it, a system prompt appeared. "Hidden quest. You have discovered the magician's base. Do you wish to enter?" Pella's eyes widened at the unexpected quest. This had never appeared in normal mode. Seeing the reward, however, she frowned. The reward listed was unknown item. Was it worth the risk? Pella paused, lost in thought. She was only interested in Pat for the sake of increasing his favorability. She wasn't particularly curious about his secrets, especially if there was no clear benefit. Besides, everyone had their own privacy. As the rumbling sound echoed again, she changed her mind and pressed accept. The wall slid open, revealing a secret passage. Beyond the wall lay a dark, spacious corridor. From the outside, there was no indication of such a large space within. A muffled thudding continued to emanate from the depths. As she reached the end of the passage, she heard the sound of children. Pella gazed at the magical space before her, an environment she had never been able to experience while playing the game. Besides bookshelves overflowing with books, there were many other curious objects. "This place is like a museum," Pella murmured in awe. Suddenly, a heavy thud brought her back to the present. She saw a group of children emerge from a corner and scatter. Each child wore an animal mask. A child wearing a lion mask narrowly dodged a falling icicle. "Hey, be careful. If the box gets damaged, we're dead. The guild master will kill us." Pella looked towards the icicle. She could faintly make out an object encased within the ice, something vaguely familiar. If she remembered correctly, it was a holy relic of the ancient magicians. This necklace was obtained by Winter during his explorations in the North Wind. It was a magical item used by an ancient magician, an item that could influence Pat's storyline. At that moment, the child wearing the pig mask chanted a strange incantation. A beam of white light, like a laser, shot out from the top of the magical barrier. Pella hurried towards the children. "Just what are you doing?" she demanded, addressing the children who seemed poised to chant another strange spell. The children's gazes snapped towards her, making her the immediate center of attention. "Who's this lady?" one whispered. Pella, composing herself, affected a mature tone. "I'm not a lady," she explained. "I'm a guest of the Merchant Guild. Who are you, and what are you doing here?" "We're the chief disciples of the great magician, Dummy," one child blurted out. "Hey, you're not supposed to say that," another hissed. "And even guests aren't allowed in here." The children's chatter, a cacophony of voices, made it impossible for Pella to think. "Children, enough. Enough." Though no one immediately responded, the children's attention, thankfully, refocused on her. Seizing the moment, Pella quickly added, "It doesn't matter who I am or who you are. The problem is, you're about to damage a very rare artifact. Don't you have chisels or hammers? Did your master tell you to break the ice like that?" The children immediately deflated, their bravado gone. "Actually," one mumbled, "the guild master gave us these before he left." "But the ice is too thick," another chimed in. "These tools won't break it. Plus, there's magic on it. It keeps repairing itself. If the master were here, he could just use a spell." Pella sighed and held out her hand. Taking the tools, she walked towards the icy block. The children were right. The small holes they had chipped away were slowly freezing over. The newly formed ice wasn't perfect, though. Turning back, she asked the children to bring hot water. She'd learned this technique in university, thinking she'd never need it. She never imagined she'd be putting it into practice for the first time in a game. The children behind her grew excited, eager to help. It wasn't long before Pella, shifting from a crouch to a standing position, felt a sharp pain in her back. "Oh, my back," she groaned. Half of the chest was now free from its icy prison. The children, too, were exhausted. "It's all thanks to you, miss," one exclaimed. "Yeah, thanks for showing us how." Just then, a chilling voice echoed from behind them. "Who are you?" "I cast a spell. Ordinary people can't see or enter this place." "You're wearing a mask. Are you a magician too?" Pella turned, stiff as a robot, to face the speaker. A man wearing a rabbit mask stood some distance away. Pella swallowed, trying to formulate a response. She couldn't exactly say, "I'm here for a hidden side quest," could she? As she hesitated, her Halgandu-like ability meter began to flash ominously, plummeting from -8. Pella's eyes widened in alarm. What's happening? She felt her lip tremble. There was no mention of penalties when she accepted the quest. Why was this happening? Pat waited impassively for her answer. "You better tell me how you got in here," he said, his voice low and dangerous. The sudden drop in Halgandu had left Pella's mind blank. Though her mouth opened and closed, no sound came out. Panic seized her. The children rushed forward to defend her. "We brought her in," they cried, gesturing towards the artifact behind them. Pat's eyes widened slightly. Then, in a stern voice, he addressed the children. "Didn't I tell you not to let outsiders in here?" "But she said she's a guest, not an outsider," one child protested. "And the inscription is really hard to decipher." Pat's icy gaze softened slightly at the word guest. His eyes flickered between Pella and the artifact. He lowered the magical barrier and bowed apologetically to Pella. Aside from Aklee's insincere apologies, this was the first time Pella had received an apology from a target character. But the apology didn't bring Pella much comfort. The fear induced by the plummeting Halgando, the fear of some unknown penalty, had shaken her deeply. Already unnerved by this world, Pella barely had the energy to be wary of potential dangers. Suppressing the urge to bolt, she stammered, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know this was a secret space. I've overstepped my bounds." Pat looked surprised. Gesturing towards the artifact, he invited her closer. "Please come this way." It was clear he didn't want her lingering near the entrance. What kind of game is this? Pella thought miserably. I'm never taking another quest like this again. Negative emotions churned within her. Suddenly, The noblewoman's voice rang out. Goodbye. Let's play again next time. 5 small figures wearing masks waved at Pella. The children who had just helped her brought a finger to their lips and made a shushing gesture. Pella waved back in thanks. She was touched by their concern for her, though she couldn't quite read their expressions behind the masks. Smiling gently, she walked in silence towards the exit. She thought about the demonic staff, its seals layered one upon another like multiple locks on a door, waiting to be undone. Finally, Pat lowered his wrist. Thank you for looking after the children, he said, but it's quite late now. I can't accept a commission. Please come again next time. Hearing his words, Pella glanced out the window, realizing with a jolt that she had unknowingly spent a considerable amount of time there. It looked like she was going to be lectured by the Duke again. I'm not here to commission a task, Pella countered. I came after receiving a message from the White Rabbit. I've been waiting here for a while, and no one came. I don't have the time to make another trip. To her surprise, Pat dipped his head apologetically. Most clients come a day or two after receiving the message, he explained. I didn't expect you to arrive so quickly. It was an oversight on my part. Pella's face flushed crimson. Was there some kind of unspoken rule among nobles about this? Now she was the one who looked like an eager beaver, rushing to pick up a commission the moment she received the message. And the guild master she was so eager to see was making her wait. Muttering under her breath, Pella said, "Just pretend I didn't say anything. Let's call it even." She turned to leave the guild. Pat's voice, laced with concern, stopped her. I can't let a benefactor of those children leave like this, he said, especially after making you wait. It's fine, Pella replied. It's not that big of a deal. I need to get back quickly. Pat cut her off, his voice earnest. Miss, please give me another chance. Pella had been about to refuse his offer, but when she saw his affection rating flicker and rise to 6%, she changed her mind. Then tell me the results of your investigation, she conceded. Do you know, miss, Pat began, very few people realize that this merchant guild is run by a mage. And no one who has seen my secret has ever walked away, he added, his voice low. Are you going to kill me? Pella asked, startled. Pat looked taken aback. No, that's a crime. I would simply cast a memory-erasing spell. The person would fall into a deep sleep. I should erase your memory too, but I apologize, miss. I can't bring myself to do it today. If you erase my memory, Pella pointed out, I'll also forget about commissioning your guild. I wouldn't want that, Pat admitted. He then offered to tell her the information she sought, without any conditions. Why are those children so important? Pella asked, are they the descendants of some traitor? Pat's voice took on a bitter edge. They are orphans rescued after being imprisoned and abused by an anti-magic group. Rescued orphans? An anti-magic group? Does this game have such a deep backstory? Pella wondered aloud. Even with her altered memories, she couldn't recall anything like this. Pat continued. During the period when demonic magic became more widely used, those falsely pious zealots began persecuting mages. They claimed these suspicious dark arts were completely incompatible with their teachings. Now, even the royal family connects legitimacy with faith in God, making the situation for mages increasingly difficult. Some radical groups even spread the false belief that only when all those who practice witchcraft disappear will the true emperor chosen by God be born. You should know, miss, that the Lyra theocracy was the nation recently defeated by the Crown Prince's army. Of course, Pella didn't know. Nevertheless, she nodded, pretending to understand. No one should believe such a foolish theory, she remarked. Surprisingly, many nobles agree, Pat countered. Even nobles within the empire. What benefit do they gain from persecuting mages? Usually, those nobles are involved in the business of selling magic items. To monopolize the entire market, they need to eliminate the existence of mages. Pella had never understood why Pat hid his identity as a mage when she played the game in normal mode. She had always assumed it was just part of the author's design. She hadn't realized there was such a complex reason behind it. So, I beg you, miss, Pat pleaded, please keep my secret. It concerns the lives of these children. As he spoke of the children, the 6% affection rating above his head flickered with intensity. Everything Pella knew about Pat was from the normal game mode. She didn't know this version of him. In the game, he was a righteous and kind mage. He not only helped the poor, but also cared for orphans. It was in the commoner's district that he discovered the true Duchess's daughter, who had been adopted. Thanks to his help, the kind-hearted heroine returned to her real family. That was the day of Pella's coming-of-age ceremony. Considering the story's premise, a question arose unbidden in Pella's mind. Why would the kind and generous, yet formidable, Pat repeatedly bring back the villainous to the fake coming-of-age ceremony? Wasn't it obvious he was deliberately humiliating her? Pat, sensing her unease, cleared his throat softly. He gently squeezed Pella's trembling hand and opened the options menu, which he had closed some time ago. The options menu appeared before her eyes. Seeing the system's contents, Pella couldn't suppress a sigh. After a long silence, she spoke. "If I reveal the children's situation, what will you do?" The aura emanating from Pat was completely different now. "Then, dear guest, your insignificant noble status will also be in danger." He deliberately emphasized the word status. It no longer felt like a request, but a warning, a confirmation that their amiable facade was just that, a facade. Pella closed the options menu and responded with genuine sincerity. "Don't worry. I'll keep my mouth shut. Are we done? It's getting late. I should go back." Pella rose from her chair, feeling a pathetic sense of relief. Pat also stood, following behind her with a curious gaze. "What about the information, miss? About the person you were looking for?" Pella had already made her decision in a split second. "I don't need it anymore," she said with an indifferent tone. "I've already learned who he is through another informant." Pat froze, taken aback. This was clearly an unexpected answer. He might be more normal than the other potential romantic interests. But after that incident, her plans to raise his Halgandu, likability/affection level, had completely gone down the drain. Besides, Pat was about to meet the female protagonist anyway. And now, to him, she was just a ticking time bomb who knew his secret. She would rather pursue other characters who hadn't yet encountered the protagonist. "Right, you said you'd give me information for free if I kept the secret, didn't you?" Pella turned back, placing the white handkerchief and the swan-shaped box on the table. "I don't need the information. Give this to that person for me. After all, the reason I came here was to request this favor. Is there a message you'd like to send along with it? Just let him know it's a thank you." Pat's eyes widened slightly behind his mask. His Halgandu rose sharply. Despite this, Pella walked towards the door without hesitation. "Thank you for your time. I'll take my leave now." Just as she was about to open the door, it suddenly slammed shut. Pella spun around in alarm, only to find the rabbit mask inches from her face. "Miss," a low, magnetic voice resonated, "I want to repay you for looking after the children." The sudden proximity and unexpected words flustered her. "It's fine. I shouldn't have gone in there in the first place." Pat leaned closer, his voice a low murmur. "I hate being in anyone's debt. I'm a mage. I could do many things ordinary people can't. When you need help, please come to me anytime." Pella's heart pounded. What did he mean? Was he threatening her, making sure she understood he was a mage? At the same time, a white box appeared above Pat's head. Hidden quest. Uncover the mage's secret. Quest reward. The mage's assistance. One time. This lousy reward. She muttered under her breath, accidentally letting her thoughts slip. I was planning to never see him again. A reward like this. Pella gently pushed him away, and he immediately stepped back. "If I need anything, I'll come back." Though she doubted she ever would. Finally leaving Pat's shop, she saw the sky had been dyed the color of ink. Oh no, she realized, remembering she had teleported there and forgotten to arrange for a carriage back. What an idiot. She had just confidently declared she wouldn't need any help. If she went back now to ask for a carriage, he would definitely think she was ridiculous. She had already been brazen enough for one day. She couldn't bear any more embarrassment. Pella looked across the street. The surroundings seemed familiar, much like the street she had visited with the Ducal brothers. Suddenly, not far away, two knights in silver armor were questioning a menacing-looking man. An argument broke out between the knights and the man. Pella felt like she had seen that armor before. Her eyes widened in realization. That's the ducal crest. Around the commotion, she noticed more figures in similar armor dispersed at intervals. A sense of dread began to creep in. Had they discovered she was missing and come looking for her? But just then, a familiar voice reached her from the direction of the altercation. Pella turned towards the source of the commotion. Raven black hair, a luxuriously draped shawl, and gleaming silver armor tinged with gray. It was Derek without a doubt. Fortunately, she had at least had the foresight to wear a cloak and a concealing mask. Derek, with his utter disdain for her, would hardly have bothered to memorize the details of a mask she'd bought. He had been listening to the knight's report, but now looked up sharply towards where Pella stood. His previously stern expression slowly morphed into a frown. Before he could fully recognize her, Pella spun around and fled back the way she had come. Her needless bravado had lasted less than 5 minutes before she decided to desperately call for help. Her unnecessary bravado had crumbled in less than 5 minutes, leaving Pella scrambling to invoke the assistance promised as a reward. An awkward silence filled the air. Surprisingly, Pat was still standing impassively by the door. Pella had never been so grateful for the anonymity her mask provided, shielding her burning shame. Slamming the door shut, Pella blurted out, "I apologize for my sudden change of heart, but is the help you offered me still available?" Hearing Pat's affirmation, Pella continued, "Then please, take me to Hamilton Street." Now, Pat seemed to consider the location of Hamilton Street for a moment. Pella's only concern was whether Derek had recognized her. She had to get home before him, no matter what. Pat asked, puzzled, why she wasn't accompanied by guards. Pella deflected, saying, "Every lady has her secrets, don't they?" With that, he pulled something from his pocket and extended a hand towards Pella. Pella placed her hand in his. A white, shimmering frame appeared before them. A system message flashed, using one instance of magical assistance. Now traveling to Hamilton Street. "You might feel a little dizzy," he warned, just as the white light flared, blindingly bright. When she could see again, she and Pat were standing in a deserted alley. Strangely, Pat's magical transport felt exactly like the system's teleportation. "You can let go now," Pat said beside her. "HM? What?" Pella blinked, tilting her head. Following his gaze, Pella looked down and saw their hands still clasped together. Startled, she yanked her hand away and jumped back. Ignoring the awkward moment, Pella offered her sincere thanks. "Bud Bomet Politelli. It was my pleasure to repay your kindness, Mississippi." Pella cleared her throat. His humility seemed at odds with his eccentric mage persona. "You truly are trustworthy," she said, studying him with a curious gaze. "Will you be visiting our establishment again?" Pella met his eyes, a small smile playing on her lips. "Is there any reason for us to meet again?" A cold breeze swept through the alley, leaving a pregnant silence. They stood masked, their true identities hidden, though each was aware of the other's secret. Pella continued to feign ignorance of his true nature. For his sake, and her own, as they stood on the precipice of meeting the heroine, further entanglement would be unwise. They held each other's secrets, a dangerous bond. Just as Pella turned to leave the alley, Pat's voice drifted after her. "If that person receives the item and has a response, may I relay it to you?" Pella paused, glancing back at him over her shoulder. "That won't be necessary," she replied with a gentle smile. She couldn't imagine the expression hidden beneath his mask. After parting ways with Pat, Pella immediately made her way back towards the hidden entrance, the dog hole, as it were. She crouched down, and just as she was about to slip through, footsteps approached. "Pella Kalat, I knew it was you. Get up." His voice was tight with barely suppressed anger. Pella jumped back, straightening up. "Oh, it's you. Who else would be running around in such a cheap mask? What are you doing here? You complained and whined about wanting to go to the festival tonight, caused a ruckus, and even brought the guards back with you. I'll let it all slide. What more do you want? Are you looking for trouble again?" Derek's brow furrowed, demanding an answer. But no matter how he pressed, Pella wouldn't tell him a thing. He repeated his apologies like a parrot. "I am willing to accept any punishment, Lord Derek. Any punishment at all. Every time I see you, you only punish me left and right. Do you wish to be severely punished?" Derek's fury startled Pella. Before she could answer, he roughly grabbed her hand, his aura radiating a terrifying intensity that filled her with fear. "Where are we going, Lord Derek?" Pella asked, deeply uneasy. He offered no reply. Anxiety gnawed at her. "What rotten luck," she muttered to herself. "Should I just kneel and beg for mercy now? Even though he loathes me, his stepsister, he wouldn't just stab me with a sword like the crown prince just because I left the Duke's estate, would he? Whatever. Begging won't do any good. Even if he scolds me in front of the Duke, I don't care." After passing a grand building, a small path appeared, leading through a lush forest and meadow. Why are we suddenly here? Pella wondered. Is he planning to finish me off somewhere secluded? Pella stopped at a signpost. Wait a moment. Derek turned to her, his voice icy. Didn't you say you wanted to be punished? Follow me. And no complaining. Pella had no choice but to obey. Although they hadn't walked far, fatigue quickly set in. Is the punishment mountain climbing? Pella puffed, her face flushed. If so, he really is a cruel bastard. Wait, what now? She responded to his irritated grunt. Despite her fear, Pella protested weakly. You're walking too fast. It's hard to keep up. To her surprise, he actually slowed his pace. Seeing Derek's unexpected consideration, Pella felt a flicker of relief. At least she wouldn't be summarily executed. They continued in silence for a long while. Exhausted, Pella finally sighed. "We're here at last." Looking up, she gasped, her eyes widening at the sight before her. In normal mode, there was no festival scene. As for hard mode, Pella had never survived long enough to trigger it. Everything she now saw was something she had never witnessed in the game, never even imagined experiencing: the sheer beauty of the city. Always on guard, she had lived in constant anticipation of potential dangers, both in the game and in reality. She had never taken the time to appreciate the world around her. But now it all felt so real, despite being just a game setting. Just then, Derek raised his hand and pointed. "Look there." Pella followed his gesture. A man was running, fleeing pursuers. He seemed to have stolen something. Such incidents were common during festivals, both in reality and in games. People were the same everywhere. Watching the same scene, Derek spoke. "Those thieves are nothing. Amidst the festivities, far more dangerous criminals lurk around you. In places you can't see, far worse things are happening. Just yesterday, there was a murder at a nearby tavern, but a sheltered young lady like yourself wouldn't know about such things." Pella looked up at Derek, puzzled. Why was he telling her this? A sneer touched his lips. "Are you planning to mingle with such lowlifes?" Pella sighed. After a brief silence, she replied, "I swear I haven't done anything to disgrace the family. I'm not a child anymore, Lord Derek. While I may have been reckless, I'm not stupid enough to court death." "A young lady sneaking out through a dog door? That's clever. What were you doing in the market district? Do I even have to ask? You'd better tell me." "I was looking for an information broker who could help me find someone." Pella weaved truth and lies into a new narrative, a tactic she often employed with Derek. "Someone helped me at the palace, but I lost something he lent me. I wanted to apologize." Pella watched Derek's face, a thrill of satisfaction coursing through her as he visibly stiffened. "I'm talking about you, Derek. You're the one who had the servants throw away the handkerchief." Feeling guilty now, Derek remained silent for a moment before speaking with difficulty. "If that's the case, why not have the servants handle it? An unmarried young lady seeking out a man of unknown origins, such rumors would shame the family." Pella smoothly proposed her plan. This was her chance. He needed to change. Derek's impression of Pella, the villainess, needed to shift. She was no longer the incessantly screaming, good-for-nothing parasite he'd always perceived her to be. Only then would he not worry about her causing trouble. Derek sighed deeply. "You'll be an adult soon," he began. "Even if you don't tell me where you're going, I won't stop you. Next time, don't crawl through the dog door. I'll talk to the butler. Or you can go out with that slave you brought back." Watching Derek's favorability increase, Pella couldn't comprehend not only his kindness, but also his words. If she died outside, shouldn't he be happy? Why was he suddenly being nice? Pella, her eyes filled with confusion, asked, "Aren't you going to punish me?" Derek's frown served as his reply. He suddenly reached out to Pella and plucked the mask from her face. "This is confiscated. It's unbecoming of the Khalid family," he reiterated, his hand still outstretched after removing her mask. "This is confiscated. It's unbecoming of the Khalid family." Pella looked up at Derek through her now unobstructed vision. He appeared cold and angry, yet there was a hint of amusement in his expression. Was she imagining it? Then, Derek suddenly spoke, a bracelet of pink crystal and rubies resting in his large hand. "These jewels are imbued with magic. As long as you wear it, you can cast protection and illusion spells. The mage who gave me this said, it will make you appear to others as a boy your age. The cheap ones you had before were all broken, so I replaced them with the best garnets." Derek added, his tone sounding almost like a grumble. Pella glanced at the bracelet in his palm. This was from the first day of the festivities, the night she'd run off to rescue Icarus. Derek had taken a liking to the bracelet then. Looking at its deep purplish-red color, he had thought it similar to Pella's hair, but he'd never imagined he would give it to her as a gift. She had assumed he was thinking about clothes. This was the second gift Derek had given her. Pella lifted her head, gazing once more into his blue eyes, feeling a profound sense of unfamiliarity. Without thinking, she blurted out, "Why are you giving me this bracelet?" Rather than expressing gratitude for the gift, Pella was more inclined to be suspicious. After all, he had that history with Rarik. "Don't you dislike my extravagant spending?" For some reason, Pella's words made Derek slightly uncomfortable. "Don't you like jewelry?" I do, but I like the kind that isn't stolen, isn't taken, and belongs completely to me. Pella wasn't sure how much Derek understood of what she was saying, but she was certain his face had stiffened. He knew what she meant. If you don't want it, then throw it away, he said, and stop those ridiculous antics. Derek turned and quickly descended the hill. Pella wondered if she should follow. Suddenly, a white window appeared before her eyes. Pella froze. Hadn't she refused this quest? She was sure she had pressed decline. But why had it succeeded? From his system rewards, she received Derek's increased favorability, the beautiful bracelet, and something called a myzin. Finally, Pella bent down and picked up the bracelet from the ground. As she brushed the dust from her cloak, a wave of sadness washed over her. To be in such a difficult situation, to have to be grateful and accept such things. A wave of sadness washed over her. To be in such a difficult situation, to have to be grateful and accept such things. Watching Derek's retreating figure, she grumbled. Couldn't he have just said it was a gift? Jerk. The month-long festival was finally coming to an end. Emily was practically buzzing with excitement. Because it was the last day, there would be even more parades, acrobats, and fireworks. But Pella had no desire to go. She sat at her desk for a long time. It had been a while since she'd arrived here. During the festival, she had interacted with each of them. It seemed it was time to enter the important chapters of the game. In the early days after her arrival, every day had felt like a brush with death. Of course, she was still walking a tightrope. She had a long way to go. Pella opened a drawer and retrieved a hidden sheet of paper. Written on it were the basic settings for the male leads. She looked at Derek and Helena's favorability ratings, especially Reeric's. His was much lower than the other male leads. But considering it had started in the negatives, it had risen by a considerable 20%. As much as Derek's. In short, gaining favor with both of them. There's nothing to be happy about, because I haven't acted as recklessly as the original Pella. Maintaining the status quo with them is enough. As for Pat, he's out of the picture after the last hidden mission. And the next one is the Crown Prince, who isn't even a consideration. Pella drew several excess in quick succession, then moved on to the next. As expected, only Icarus remained. Just then, a knock echoed from the door. It was the Duke's butler, informing her that dinner was ready. Pella blinked. It was a rare invitation. It was the Duke's butler, informing her that dinner was ready. Pella blinked. It was a rare invitation. Ever since she arrived, she'd been dining alone in her room, and she didn't particularly want to go. But the butler continued. The Duke has something to tell you, miss, so he requests your presence. Which means you'll be there too, brother. Hearing the butler's confirmation, Pella immediately adjusted her mindset. Before I go to the dining room, there's something I need you to do. After lunch, send the digestive medicine to my room. Digestive medicine? He echoed, curious about her unexpected request. Pella simply nodded. As they walked silently down the hallway, the butler, matching her pace, suddenly spoke. Lately, the Duke seems to be very busy with matters concerning the palace. Pella wasn't aware that the Duke was busy. She only knew that he seemed to come home late, but she wasn't particularly interested. When the Duke was home before, didn't you insist on attending every family dinner? He asked. Pella frowned, sighing inwardly for the crocodile. It was fine staying in her room. What good was stuffing her face with food in that place? You're eager to dine with them, but who knows how much they despise you. Hearing the butler call her name, she saw him looking at her with a complex, scrutinizing gaze. Before he could react further, Pella replied absent-mindedly, I've always been worried about making mistakes, so eating in my room is a good idea for me. The butler quickly closed his mouth and changed the subject. Because you've been staying in your room, miss, the Duke has been feeling very lonely. Who knows? Big brother probably thinks the same, Pella muttered to herself. The butler wanted to say something, but they had already arrived at the dining room. He bowed respectfully to Pella, but the eyes that watched her were unfriendly. Pella didn't care. The door opened. From the doorway, she saw their faces. They were the ones she truly needed to deal with. Do you have any sense of time? Why are you so late? Came the disgruntled reprimand. It was the most extravagant feast Pella had seen since arriving in this world. It was the most extravagant feast Pella had seen since arriving in this world. Compared to the meal she had in her room, the difference was stark. As Pella stared blankly at the abundance of dishes, the Duke, seated at the far end, spoke in a low voice. let's eat. Pella wasn't entirely sure of the proper dining etiquette for nobles, but the villainess whose body she inhabited didn't have much common sense either. So even if her manners weren't perfect, it wouldn't be too noticeable a flaw. Pella looked down at the cutlery in front of her. After making sure everyone had soup in hand, she followed suit. Pella immediately scoffed. The cutlery placed before her was all for children just learning to use knives and forks. She must have been hurt because the Duke, seated to her right, glanced at her sharply. Pella quickly shook her head. Come to think of it, if the Duke cared even slightly about her, he would have noticed that someone had tampered with her place setting. As if mocking the situation, Pella picked up each piece of cutlery, wondering if she'd actually be able to eat any of the food. Heaven knew how Emily managed, with the kitchen staff's attitude being so poor, to still resolutely bring her normal food, and occasionally even things she wanted to eat. It was truly commendable. She'd have to reward him when she returned to her room. Pella stared at the haphazardly arranged dishes on her plate, but didn't take a single bite. This was the path the villainous Pella walked. The meal was nearing its end. The Duke took a sip of wine and said, "It's the last day. Aren't you going out?" Pella replied curtly, not interested. Regardless, her icy demeanor immediately caught the attention of her older brothers. Their favorability ratings flickered. The two sharp-tongued men immediately masked their expressions and turned to the Duke, forcing smiles. "I'm still confined," she reminded them. The Duke clicked his tongue. "You've used that confinement excuse countless times, and I, for one, have never seen such a fool begging to be confined for the sake of a mere slave. There's another reason I'm having you dine with us today. The upcoming hunting competition." The hunting competition. Pella pondered the details from the game, but couldn't immediately recall such an event. The Duke elegantly set down his cutlery and began to speak. "This time, it will be held in the forest north of the palace, as you know. This hunting competition holds great significance. With the crown prince at the vanguard, royalty and nobility from the vassal states will participate. Moreover, rare animals representing each nation will be released. Those who oppose the crown prince's participation in the war disapprove of this decision. At this juncture, it's best to solidify our position. Therefore, at last night's aristocratic assembly, the Hallett family also expressed their willingness to participate." Pella, half-heartedly listening to the Duke, suddenly remembered the hunting competition event from the game. The Empire holds a hunting competition every quarter. Indirectly, the rare animals from the defeated northern nations are under pressure. Later, the angelic heroine, Ives, disapproving of this cruelty, persuaded the crown prince to cancel it. But Ives didn't participate in the hunting competition in the story, because the villainous Pella, intensely jealous of Ives and the attention she received from the male leads, secretly poisoned the true daughter of the Duke, preventing her from attending. Unable to go, the heroine, Ives, wandered around her home, thus increasing Icarus's affection for her. Of course, this didn't remain hidden for long. In the finale, to expose all the atrocities committed by Pella, the crown prince subjected her to unspeakable torture. It was a torment that froze the heart alive, preventing it from dying, before being eaten spoonful by spoonful, with the same poison used on the heroine. A series of vivid illustrations flashed through her mind. Pella instinctively shuddered. The Duke, who had been discussing the aristocratic assembly, suddenly turned to her. Pella hadn't been listening to a word he'd said. She stammered a reply, startled like a fool. Fortunately, the Duke didn't seem to notice. "Through this assembly's vote, the ban prohibiting your participation has been lifted. What do you think, Pella?" Unable to immediately answer the Duke's question, Pella was bewildered. What ban? She knew nothing about it. The villainous Pella had apparently done something at a previous hunting competition that resulted in her being barred from attending. As she hesitated, the Duke asked again if she wanted to participate. "If you wish to compete, I will inform them to prepare your hunting equipment." Just then, a loud bang echoed as someone slammed their fist on the table. "That lunatic!" a voice shrieked. "No, that woman. She did it last year. She'll definitely do it again this year." The pink-haired girl, who had slammed her fist on the table, continued to yell. "That lunatic! No, that woman. She did it last year. She'll definitely do it again this year." Ever since that incident, all the noble ladies had wished to see Pella imprisoned. Although the Duke had tried to intervene, the pink-haired girl, Lana, continued, glaring furiously at Pella. Utterly confused, Pella, with the villainess's characteristic audacity, asked, "What did I do?" "Are you asking because you don't know?" Of course you don't know. Why else would you ask? Pella wanted to throw those words back in Lana's face, and almost did. But she had to restrain herself. To understand the full story, Pella goaded Lana to reveal everything. However, the answer came from an unexpected source. You pestered father to make you a 10-stringed lute. You've probably forgotten, haven't you? Even though it was dangerous, you still brought it with you. Then, at the tea party, you flew into a rage, threatening to kill Countess Kylan and her entourage. Finally, the guards subdued you like a wild animal. For a long time afterward, rumors circulated that someone in the Hallett family had taught a chimpanzee how to use a 10-stringed lute. Pella was speechless. She couldn't escape these outrageous acts. After all, she was the most wicked villain in the game. Such behavior was expected of her. Pella remained silent. The Duke, however, intervened, silencing them both. Pella, you remember, don't you? We, the Hallett family, must be discreet. Isn't that right? Of course, father. I won't disappoint you this time, Pella replied instantly. Hearing the grinding of teeth from the side, she thought, if only I had some medicine. Well, that's all I wanted to say. The Duke tapped his finger lightly on the table, signaling the end of his pronouncements. The dining room doors opened, and the head chef entered, pushing a trolley. Dessert? She hadn't even eaten anything, and dessert was already being served. Pella stared dejectedly at the head chef. The dining room was bathed in a soft, warm light. The flickering candlelight seemed to weave a luxurious and mysterious tapestry. The table was laden with exquisite dishes, each a testament to the chef's skill, adding an air of anticipation to the dinner. Against this backdrop of opulence, Pella felt a profound and inexplicable sense of defeat and loneliness. Her eyes held a distinct sadness, her stomach gnawing with hunger, yet she hadn't managed to eat a single bite. The table was already laden with tempting desserts. Pella, her gaze inadvertently despondent, watched the chef, her heart filled with a mixture of confusion and resentment. As tea was served to the Duke and Derek, and Lana received a plate of enviously delicate handmade biscuits, Pella's spirits sank further. She knew her turn was next. It didn't matter what dessert arrived. She usually devoured sweets indiscriminately. But when the plate was placed before her, it held a simple milk pudding, not the decadent treat she'd hoped for. A wave of inexplicable disappointment and helplessness washed over her. A woman, observing Pella's untouched pudding, let out a small, sharp laugh, the sound carrying a pointed barb. Her eyes glittered with mockery, as if playing some cruel game. Pella, deciding to retaliate with a clear and deliberate motion, dropped her smallest spoon. It landed with a clatter, drawing the attention of everyone in the dining room. The Duke looked displeased. Despite her outward composure, Pella's heart ached with loneliness and the sting of being overlooked. She stubbornly remained at the table. This was her only chance to be in the presence of her family. The entire scene evoked a sense of pity and bewilderment. Why, for someone seemingly so strong, did she endure this?